Namaskar, Namaste. Let us begin the session with the blessings of the divine. Om Sahanava Bhavtu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahai, Tejas Vinavadhitamastu, Mavid Vishavahai, Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Let us all pray to the divine, to the Guru, to protect us, to groom us, to nurture us, to bless us with all the knowledge, to give us all the strength, and which shall together lead us all to the path of success. On this beautiful Sunday morning, me, Vaishnavi Badve, on behalf of Pune branch of WIRC of ICI, I welcome you all to the National Conference on GST, organized by the GST and Indirect Tax Committee of the ICI. In the words of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, the Goods and Services Tax (GST) is a path-breaking legislation of New India. GST is not merely a tax reform, but a milestone in realizing Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel's dream of Ek Bharat Shreshta Bharat. Therefore, one nation, one tax has rightly become the topic of several discussions and seminars, and so have we gathered here today to learn the evolution and the simplified path ahead. The journey of GST in India has been full of trough and crest and marked with several amendments, notifications, circulars, and to streamline the law, we have gracefully adopted it. The increasing month-to-month GST collection is the testimony to this success. To make our further journey simplified, we have amongst us the eminent speaker, CA Abhay Desai sir. Welcome, sir. Let me introduce to you our first speaker of the day, CA Abhay Desai sir, who, after practicing with the firm Yadnesh Desai and Company as a partner, in April 2022 founded the law firm Desai Legal, and since then he is practicing as an advocate in the field of indirect taxation. Expert in handling complex issues in indirect taxation, he renders advisory and litigation services up to the Honorable Supreme Court and has to his credit several reported judgments in the field of indirect taxation. He has a deep understanding of not just the tax laws, but also the business dynamics and technological issues, which renders him the best in delivering effective advice to the clients. To his credit, there are several accolades, but to enumerate all of them would require almost a session. So for the brevity, I will just name a few, like one of the several publications that he authored, his book on Sabka Vishwas Dispute Resolution Scheme 2019, published by the Chamber of Tax Consultants, Mumbai. The stalwart has addressed more than 500 seminars on indirect taxation and has published more than 500 articles in leading journals on taxation in India. His treatise on recovery and attachment proceedings under GVAT law is very well known to all of us. He has not only been the member of several indirect tax committee of ICAI, but also has immensely contributed in formulation of indirect tax laws with his interaction with the Honorable Finance Minister and the Honorable Deputy Finance Minister of India. He has been conferred with several awards like the Best Column, Best Paper Writer by Gujarat Sales Tax Bar Association and GST Practitioners Association of Maharashtra. Welcome, sir. I now request CA Sachin Maniyar, sir, to welcome him and felicitate him. Thank you, sir. Let us proceed to the first session, Finer Issues in ITC. Desai, sir, all yours.
A very warm good morning. First and foremost, I am thankful to the Pune branch for inviting me and allowing me to share some of my thoughts on a very important topic in the area of GST. Friends, it's a Sunday. In fact, I generally do not work on Sunday, but since I have been asked, and I think feelings would be mutual. So I will try and make this session interactive. If anyone has any things to share, or maybe any doubts, maybe at the end of the session we can take it up. Friends, ITC, as I was listening to the introduction given by the MOC, certainly one nation, one tax was the idea with which GST was introduced, but unfortunately that idea remains an idea on paper. As we will see even in the context of ITC, there are several issues where this basic philosophy stands defeated. Certain credits which are otherwise admissible are lost because of the fact that that expenditure was incurred in some other state where you are not having your registration. Place of supply could also be one of the criteria for the taxpayers to miss certain credits which are otherwise eligible. We'll look at those issues. So one nation, one tax, it is now the only hope is on the courts as we go ahead on this journey, once the department starts their actions. And ultimately, we believe that the courts may look at that idea and may try and interpret the provisions in line with that idea of keeping the tax as a unified system rather than as a fragmented system where every state and the center will fight with each other to collect their share of the revenue. Now friends, the topic is finer issues in ITC, including critical checkpoints. Now why ITC? आप सबको पता होगा, even those who are practicing in indirect tax before GST, that more than 80% of the litigation in indirect tax revolves around tax credits. Department का एक ही मंतव्य होता है कि क्रेडिट मिलनी नहीं चाहिए, और बिजनेसमैन का एक ही मंतव्य होता है कि पूरी क्रेडिट मुझे मिलनी चाहिए. तो वहीं से कॉन्फ्लिक्ट शुरू होती है. डिपार्टमेंट जो प्रैक्टिकल केसेस हमारे सामने आ रहे हैं, उससे मैं आपको बता सकता हूँ कि डिपार्टमेंट अभी भी उनकी पुरानी मानसिकता छोड़ नहीं पाए जो GST से पहले की थी. अभी भी उनको लगता है कि क्रेडिट जो मिलेगी वो तभी मिलेगी जब आप स्ट्रिक्टली कानून का पालन करेंगे, जो उनकी अंडरस्टैंडिंग में कानून है, और यदि उससे डिविएट किया, यदि उसमें कोई वेरिएशन हुआ तो क्रेडिट आपकी चली जाएगी, क्रेडिट आपको एडमिसिबल नहीं होगी. अब ये होता क्या है कि एक बार एक साधु थे, बहुत ज्ञानी थे, सीए ही होंगे, तो उनके पास एक आदमी गया पूछने के लिए कि मुझे ज़रा आप समझाइए कि ये डिपार्टमेंट और टैक्स पेयर के बीच में ये चक्कर होता क्या है. तो उन्होंने कहा ये मैं एक लाइव एग्जांपल से समझाता हूँ, ऐसे समझ में नहीं आएगा जब मैं बताऊँगा. तो उन्होंने दो आदमी को बुलाया. एक आदमी के मुंह पे थोड़ी मिट्टी लगी हुई थी, एक आदमी का मुंह साफ था. उसको पूछा वो नौजवान को कि भाई इसमें तुम्हें क्या लगता है, कौन अपना मुंह साफ करेगा. तो उसने कहा वो जिसके मुंह पे मिट्टी लगी हुई है वही आदमी अपना मुंह साफ करेगा, बिकॉज वो अपनी मिट्टी क्यों चाहेगा अपने मुंह पे. तो उन्होंने कहा गलत. तो उन्होंने क्यों ये गलत. तो उन्होंने कहा इसको आदत ही नहीं है अपना मुंह साफ रखने की. यदि आदत होती तो मिट्टी लगती, साफ करके यहाँ आता. तो जो साफ जिसका मुंह है वही साफ करेगा, बिकॉज उसको आदत है साफ रहने की. तो उन्होंने कहा बराबर है, लॉजिक तो सही है आपका. फिर इसने कहा वापस दो आदमी को बुलाया, वापस वही सिचुएशन, वापस पूछा कि अब कौन मुंह साफ करेगा. उसने कहा आपने बोला ना कि भाई वो जो साफ है जिसका मुंह वही साफ करेगा, यदि करेगा तो. जिस पे मिट्टी लगी है वो तो करेगा नहीं. उन्होंने कहा ये गलत. उन्होंने कहा क्यों गलत. तो कहता जो साफ है उसको क्या ज़रूरत वापस साफ करने की, जिसके ऊपर मिट्टी लगी है वही साफ करेगा तो. उन्होंने कहा ये भी आपका तर्क तो सही है. अब तीसरी बार वापस सेम सिचुएशन. तो आए तो उन्होंने कहा कि अब कौन साफ करेगा. तो उन्होंने कहा दोनों करेंगे साफ. क्यों दोनों करेंगे, क्योंकि जिस पे मिट्टी लगी है उसको साफ करना है, आदत नहीं है फिर भी, और जिस पे मिट्टी नहीं लगी उसको आदत है साफ करने की, इसलिए वो भी साफ करता जाएगा. तो उन्होंने कहा ये भी गलत. तो उन्होंने कहा ये कैसे गलत होगा, अब इसमें तो आपके दोनों जो आपने दो सिचुएशन पहले दी उसके तर्क दोनों मैंने अप्लाई किए हैं ये तीसरी सिचुएशन में. तो फिर क्यों गलत हुआ? नहीं, गलत इसलिए हुआ बिकॉज जिस पे मिट्टी लगी है उसको आदत नहीं है, तो वो तो साफ करेगा नहीं, और जो साफ ही है वो क्यों साफ करेगा? तो दोनों साफ नहीं करेंगे। तो मैंने कहा अब इसमें मैं क्या करूं? कहता है यही होता है टैक्स पेयर और डिपार्टमेंट के बीच में। टैक्स पेयर कहता है ये, डिपार्टमेंट कहता है वो, टैक्स पेयर कहता है ठीक है वो, तो ये, तो कहता है नहीं वो नहीं, अब ये। तो वही चक्कर आईटीसी में चलेगा। समय लगेगा, it will take time for these issues to get resolved. But today what we want to understand is what are the issues, what are my thoughts on those issues, and the critical checkpoints. Abhi finer issues and critical checkpoints is basically a paradox. Why paradox? Because if you say there is an issue, and what we are gathered today is to understand some finer and advanced issues. GST में ITC का basic provisions, so I'm sure most of you would be aware. So if there is a finer issue, certainly that itself means that there is not a single view which is possible. Because if it is a finer issue and advanced issue, certainly there are arguments, contentions that one needs to make. And then ultimately a judge has to decide whether to allow the claim or not to allow the claim. Checkpoints is something which can be standardized only in respect of issues which are not finer. जैसे हवाई जहाज़ में आप जाते हैं तो पायलट को एक चेकलिस्ट दिया जाता है, वो उसको चेक करना होता है बिफोर टेकिंग द टेक ऑफ. नाउ दैट इज़ अ साइंस है तो चेकलिस्ट बन सकता है. जहाँ पे आर्ट आएगा, जहाँ पे व्यूज़ एक्सप्रेस करना आएगा, जहाँ पे ओपिनियन देना आएगा, दे आर सर्टनली those are the finer issues where really you need that kind of expertise. And for those issues, there cannot be a standard checklist. Those are the issues that you have to observe when you examine the client's file. These are the issues that you have to observe looking at industry. These are the issues that you have to observe looking at certain decisions that are coming to us. These are the issues that you need to understand from departments' queries that they may raise when they visit your client during search, or maybe when they conduct the audit under 65. So these are basically the issues which we are going to deal with. And in the end, there is one slide that I have prepared regarding checkpoints. But that slide would be in line with the advanced issues that we are going to deal with. So what would be the agenda? Quickly, we will look at the overview of the legal provisions. Then we will answer one very important question. Why? I will tell you that whether claiming of a tax credit, what kind of a right is it? It is a right that you understand. मेरा हक है क्रेडिट लेना, बट ये हक किस नेचर का हक है? क्या ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल हक है? क्या ये स्टैट्यूटरी राइट है? दोनों में फ़र्क है. फ़र्क इस तरह से है कि यदि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल राइट है तो देन इट स्टैंड्स ऑन अ फार better footing, on a far stronger footing. Courts are going to take a view which furthers that right rather than the view that diminishes that right. When it comes to a statutory right, it stands on a lower pedestal. It is a right granted by the parliament, not the right granted by the constitution. Since constitution is above parliament, a right which is granted by a parliament is a subservient right. And in that context, when you want to exercise that right, you need to then look at what Parliament has given to you, under what conditions they have allowed you to exercise that right, and do you really have fulfilled those conditions which allows you to exercise those rights. So that would be the aspect. Then we will look at entitlement issues related to who can avail, what can be availed, where it can be availed, how it can be availed, and why to avail. Then we look at eligibility related issues under section 16(2). As you are aware, there are certain conditions. Government through parliament keeps on adding conditions in every finance bill that they introduce. So when we started with GST, there were 4 conditions. Then a 5th was introduced and implemented from 1st of January of this year. A 6th condition came to be introduced, and now that also stands implemented, although not effectively, from 1st October 2022. Then we look at time limitation aspect as to by what time limit you can avail the credit. There is an interesting issue here, especially why it is interesting, because on the day that we are today discussing, one has to understand whether can I still claim the credit related to financial year 21-22. Although you would have filed your 3B by 28th of November, But that is an anomaly because the way the amendment has come, it says up to 30th November you can claim. So we will see that aspect. How do you reconcile that 30th November with the due date of filing of 3B and how to, what view you can take. कल ही एक क्लाइंट ने पूछा कि 11 तारीख को जो रिटर्न फाइल हुआ था वेंडर का 21-22 का इनवॉइस 2B में नहीं दिख रहा था बिकॉज उसने 11 तारीख तक GSTR1 जो फाइल किया था उसमें वो ट्रांजैक्शन फर्निश नहीं किया था. उसने 12 तारीख को 1 फाइल किया और उसमें वो इनवॉइस उसने फर्निश किया. अब जब मैंने अक्टूबर का रिटर्न भरा तो अक्टूबर के रिटर्न में जो 20 नवंबर को जब मैं भरने गया तो 2B में ये ट्रांजैक्शन नहीं था बिकॉज 2B एक स्टैटिक फॉर्म है. दैट विल ओनली कैप्चर इनवॉइसेस विच हैव बीन फर्निश्ड if GSTR1 has been filed by the due date. If GSTR1 is not filed by the due date, or if GSTR1, that is, it is filed after the due date, then 2B will not capture that transaction. It will come in the next cycle of 2B, which will only be known to me on 20th of December. So this is a situation where I have an invoice of last year. I know the vendor has furnished that details, but vendor has furnished it after 11th November. I have also filed my return on 20th November where I could not have claimed that credit because it is not appearing in 2B of October. Now what to do in that situation? How can I still avail that credit? Because I still have technically time till 30th November to claim the credit related to last year. So how do you solve this kind of an issue is again something that we will touch upon. We will look at certain restrictions related to credits under section 17. There are certain very interesting aspects in that. We look at interest. If someone has availed the credit and if that credit is found to be erroneous, then in that situation, what could be the interest liability and what are the issues, especially given the fact that government has now introduced one new rule, 88B. What are the issues that are coming up based on that particular rule? And last, of course, would be the critical checkpoints. Now, legal overview, Chapter 5 of the CGST Act contains provisions related to ITC. From Section 16 to 21 are the provisions related to the topic. We will focus more on 16 and 17 because those are the two sections which generally apply to all the taxpayers. 18, 19, 20 and 21 are all unique situations, not of large applicability. When we go to rule, again Chapter 5 of the CGST rules contains the provisions related to the topic. It starts from Rule 36 and goes up to Rule 45. We will touch upon relevant sections and rules when we look at the issues. So first we need to address is what is the nature of this right. Is it a constitutional right? Is it a statutory right? If you go to the history, I will not take you through all these decisions. These are all landmark decisions of Supreme Court in the context of tax credits. It started with a sales tax case from Maharashtra itself in the case of Godrej and Boyce. Now in a sales tax context, as you are aware, it was a single point levy. So a tax was leviable only at a retail stage. There were certain industries where the tax was also leviable at a manufacturing stage. So a single point levy was indirectly converted into a double point levy in certain industries. So those industries had a grievance with the government that when there is a double point levy, then in that situation, whatever tax manufacturer has paid, they should be allowed as a set-off when the tax is again paid by the retailer when he basically sells the goods to the customer. So government had agreed to this proposition and they had allowed set-off in certain situations. Now this was a case of Godrej and Boyce where their situation was not covered under the Sales Tax Act and hence set-off was not permitted. So they challenged that, saying that set-off should have been a right, it should have been an inherent right, and if it is not a right, it results into double taxation, and therefore they went to the court asking for directing the state to grant them the set-off. So the court analyzed the provisions and took a view that, look, set-off is a benevolence from the state to the taxpayer. It is not in the nature of your right to claim it in any situation. So on that basis, the High Court took a view that unless the state does not wish to grant the set-off, court cannot then step in and grant the set-offs. So that led to that larger proposition that such set-off is a concession given by the state. It is not in the nature of a right, unfettered right, which can always be claimed by the taxpayers whenever they find a situation which results into double taxation or a cascading effect. Now that view prevailed in VAT also. Same view prevailed. Latest decision of Supreme Court in ALD Automotive also confirms that same view. On a excise front, there was also some certain developments in judiciary. In excise also, largely the view was that this is not an unfettered right, but certainly the courts rescued the taxpayers where when they had claimed the right, they were legally permitted to claim those rights. It is only after the claiming of those rights that the law was amended, rule was amended, and that right was sought to be taken away. So it is in those situations that the Supreme Court said that cannot be done unless the Act permits you to do that. By way of a delegated legislation, you cannot take away what is otherwise granted by the Act to the taxpayer. So it is in that line that Eicher Motors, Raichi Karkarya, those are the decisions that basically evolved. So what we have up till now from the courts in the pre-GST era is this, that this is not a constitutional right. This is a right given by a statute, and a right given by a statute can be claimed only to the extent of what has been granted to us, subject to the conditions which have been prescribed in the statute. Even in GST, when you look at the provisions, when you look at the constitutional scheme in the context of GST, the levy is on supply. The constitutional amendment does not say that the levy is on the differential amount of tax that is on the value addition that you have undertaken in the course of supplying goods or services. That is not the language of the constitutional amendment. The language under 279A is, it is a tax on supply of goods. Constitution is totally silent on whether the credit can be allowed against the tax which is leviable. So Constitution certainly does not say that this is a right that is flowing from the said Constitution. Therefore, to my mind, it is a statutory right. It is not a constitutional right. It is a right given by the Parliament and the state to the taxpayers through passage of the CGST Act or the State GST Act. It is not something which is flowing from the Constitution. Now, when it is a statutory right, then certainly it's a statute which is giving you the right, and therefore a statute providing certain conditions, certain restrictions have to be respected and have to be followed. So it flows from that fact that since it is a statutory right, the provisions of a statute would prevail and accordingly those rights are to be exercised. However, if there is a conflict with a constitutional right, then certainly constitutional right has to prevail. Now, what are the constitutional rights where this statutory right comes into a conflict? There can be situations. A simple example is Article 14. Where it says that there should be equality before the law. So a situation is like this, that let us say there is an honest purchaser. He has made the purchase, he has paid the taxes to the vendor, and the vendor has run away with those taxes. He has not deposited the tax to the government. There is another identical situation where the recipient and the supplier have entered into a connivance. They have generated a fake invoice. They have taken the credit. Both are party to that party. And therefore, in that situation also, the end fact remains the same, that the state has not got the tax. But the circumstances under which the state did not get the tax included a mens rea on the part of the supplier as well as the recipient in defrauding the state. So these are two situations. Net result of both the situation is same, that the state has not got the tax. Now both, if they are treated equally, in the sense that both are said that you will lose your credit, you will lose your right to avail the credit, then that creates an unequal situation because both are not equal situations, both are different situations. Article 14 says equality before the law. Supreme Court says equality before the law also means differential situation have to be treated differently, because that is a proposition flowing from the basic proposition that if equal, equal treatment, different, different treatment. So it is in that context that Article 14 comes into conflict with GST law. In these situations, Article 14 prevails because that is a constitutional guarantee. As a citizen, we have been given that guarantee by the Constitution, by birth, that this is the right that you will, is a fundamental right that you will have. So in that situation, if fundamental right comes into conflict with the GST right, then certainly a fundamental right would prevail over the GST right. Similarly, Article 19, there is a fundamental right to do business. That is a right guaranteed by the Constitution to do trade, profession or business. If you come across a situation where, let us say, that right is sought to be denied by a statutory provision, in that situation, again, a constitutional right has to prevail over a statutory right. So these are the situations where, again, Article 21 dealing with liberty, this basically comes into play when there is an arrest, and in that situation, one has to see whether 69 or Article 21, how to reconcile those two provisions. But for our discussion, it is suffice it to say that it is a statutory right claiming of the credit. However, one has to see when it comes into conflict with a constitutional right, then a constitutional right has to prevail. Last aspect on this, up till now what we discussed is something which is already settled. It is not something that is a view which is required to be tested before the court. The last is a view which is required to be tested before the courts. It is my view. What is my view? That agreed it is a statutory right. Agreed there are situations, largely situations where it will not come into conflict with a constitutional right, except what we discussed, situations where there can be a failure to pay the tax by the suppliers. These are some situations where a constitutional right can, statutory right can come into conflict with the constitutional right. But largely, let us say section 16.1, credit is allowed for business, 16.2, what you should require to avail the credit, 17, what kind of credits you are not permitted to claim. So those are all statutory rights in a way. It does not come into any conflict with any larger constitutional right. Now, in that situation, there will be ambiguity. In fact, in the next 1 hour, we will be looking at all those ambiguities now. So, in those ambiguous situations, how do you interpret the law? Because some method is required to interpret the law when you come across an ambiguous situation. Now, in that situation, how do you read the law? That is where this last proposition comes into play. That even if it is a statutory right, in case of an ambiguous situation, it is required to be interpreted considering the object of granting the right to the taxpayer. And that is again something which you will find certain Supreme Court decisions that supports that view. Now, what is the object of allowing the credit? If you look at the GST bill when it was placed before the Parliament, it clearly indicates that the earlier system had issues because in terms of cascading effect of taxes, where a lot of indirect taxes were not allowed as credits. And therefore, this proposed legislation is introduced to simplify and harmonize. And due to seamless transfer of input tax credit from one state to another in the chain of value addition, there is an inbuilt mechanism in the design of GST that would incentivize tax compliance by taxpayers. So, a bill recognizes the fact that what is proposed is a legislation which will permit a seamless transfer of credits across the entire value chain. And therefore, it is with that object in mind, what I humbly submit is that the courts are required to interpret the law when they face an ambiguous situation. So, up to this stage, what we can consider is this, that whenever you come across any issue related to ITC, one has to see whether the provision is ambiguous or clear. If there is a provision which is clear, then certainly either it would be allowed or it would be not allowed. If you come across an ambiguous situation, then you look behind that situation and try to find out what is the object behind that businessman incurring that expenditure and connect that with the object of why GST bill has been introduced in the Parliament. And then connect the legal decisions to say that a view which favors that object of allowing the cascading effect is required to be taken as opposed to a view which defeats that object. So this would be our line of argument. Of course, department's line of argument would be totally contrary to our line of argument. They would say that, look, object is all what is there when the bill is presented. You ignore everything. You only look at the express language of the law, and if the express language clearly does not support your case, the credit is not allowed. So that would be their line of argument. But certainly courts are not going to just look at that line of argument to decide whether to allow the claim or not to allow the claim. Now, issues related to entitlement. First, who can avail the credit? Law is very clear. 16(1) says that every registered person, so only a registered person is allowed to claim the credit. So if let us say for 17-18 that person was not registered, today if some liability is assessed as an unregistered person, he cannot go to the department and say that, look, if you are going to assess my liability, also allow me credit of whatever taxes that I had paid on the inputs or services or capital goods that I have procured for undertaking that business. That certainly that argument would fail for the reason that law expressly says that only registered person is permitted to avail the credits. Now, what can be claimed as a credit? What the law says, input tax charged. Input tax definition is fairly simple. It includes all kinds of taxes, state tax, I tax, union territory tax, even the tax paid of GST on imports, tax payable under reverse charge. All those are input tax. What is important is tax charged. This is very important. The law allows you to avail the credit of tax charged, not chargeable. So you don't have to look behind the reason as to why your vendor has charged 18% or 28% or 5%. Vendor may be wrong. Actual tax payable could be less. But that would not mean that whatever excess he has charged does not remain as charged, and therefore that credit is not allowable. A classic case is the case of ocean freight on CIF imports. Now you are all aware there was a large controversy that whether there is a liability on the ocean freight element embedded in the CIF contracts for importation of goods. Gujarat High Court took a view that look, it is that levy is unconstitutional, and therefore they and ultra vires to the act. Both the grounds that Gujarat High Court had taken. Supreme Court did not rule on the constitutionality aspect, but on the aspect of ultra vires, they certainly took a view. It is ultra vires on the basis that the entire transaction is a composite supply of import of goods. Now, since it is a composite supply of import of goods, then that supply cannot then be vivisected and a freight element embedded in that composite supply be taxed as a separate inward supply of services from a supplier located outside India. So now Supreme Court has taken a view that, look, this is not the notification imposing the levy is ultra vires to the act, because Section 8 of the CGST Act says in case of composite supply, the liability has to be determined based on principal supply. Principal supply is import of goods, and therefore Supreme Court took a view that a freight element embedded in that transaction cannot be taxed separately, and therefore the notification issued seeking reverse charge is ultra vires to Section 8 of the CGST Act, and on that only on that ground Supreme Court took a view and confirmed the Gujarat High Court decision. Now, we don't know the fate, what will happen in future, because what we understand is that government is not going to file a review petition against this decision, but government does not say that we will not amend the law and make an amendment into Section 8 of the CGST Act and create a deeming fiction to say that in ordinary case, composite supply, principal supply would be the subject based on which the tax implications would be determined. But then government, by way of a proviso to Section 8, can always say that in a situation, we are the parliament is giving a right to the government to notify certain supplies where even though it may be composite, but it can be vivisected and it can be taxed separately. Because this is amendment, I believe, would come not because of only ocean freight issue, but we have also another issue where all these companies who are doing the work of supply and installation of solar plants. There again we find that in a notification they say that 70% would be treated as goods, where 5% would get attracted. Now it has become 12%. And on the balance 30% it is considered as a service component, and 18% is taxed on that element. Again, something which is a composite supply, vivisected into two separate supply of goods and services and taxed differently. Again, it contradicts Section 8. So in any case, Section 8 we would see certain amendments in Section 8 to validate all those notifications that the government has issued in this context. Now, so tomorrow can the department say, because one of the argument before the Gujarat High Court was this, that look, if you pay tax on the ocean freight, credit would not be admissible to the Indian importer on the ground that Indian importer is not the recipient of the services provided by shipping line, because shipping line provides services to the foreign supplier. It is a CIF contract. And it is the foreign supplier who ultimately sells the goods, including the transportation element, to the Indian importer. So Gujarat High Court accepted that argument, saying that yes, credit is not admissible. And therefore, this has to be declared as ultra virus. Now that proposition never reached the Supreme Court. In Supreme Court, that was fortunately not argued at all. Now, can now department say that, look, now Supreme Court says this was not at all chargeable and therefore credit is not allowable right from 17 till date in case where people have paid this tax under reverse charge? My answer would be no, because the language of 16(1) does not say chargeable, it says charged. So if I have charged, because even in a reverse charge cases, when you make a self-invoice under section 31(3)(f), when the supplier is unregistered, in this situation supplier is outside India, he is an unregistered supplier. So the document to avail the credit would be your invoice that you would be making under 31(3)(f), in which you would be charging the tax of whatever is payable, 5% of the freight amount, which would be deemed to be 10% of the CIF value. So in that situation, this would be amount charged and credit would remain admissible, even though later if it is found that that amount was not chargeable. So that is the aspect one has to keep in mind. Business. The law says credit is allowable for any goods or services which are used in the course or furtherance of business. So the language is very wide, as opposed to what was the case in the pre-GST era, where a nexus with manufacturing activity was required in the context of excise law, and a nexus with sale activity was required in the context of VAT laws. Here, what is the nexus which is required is a nexus with the business, and not only just business in a routine sense, but business when a transaction is undertaken in the course or furtherance of business. The term business has also been defined very broadly in clause 17 of section 2, which includes not only the main activity of the businessman, but any activity which is incidental in connection with or ancillary to the main activity. So that is the scope and width of this definition. Now we have Supreme Court decisions, especially the decision of Malayalam Plantation and a High Court decision of Coca-Cola, where we had the similar phrase in the Sunwet credit rule also, prior to an amendment. Now, in that context, how the courts have looked at this phrase, they are saying in the course or furtherance of business does not mean that that expenditure should have a direct nexus with the ability of the businessman to make supplies or to earn profit. This is a very important test, which even Malayalam Plantation says and even Coca-Cola India says. They say test is not whether that expenditure, what was incurred with an aim of increasing the sales or increasing the profit. Because when a businessman conducts a business, that conduct is not merely geared with a direct aim of increasing sales or increasing profits. Take a case of CSR expenditure. Now, CSR expenditure is incurred to not just comply with the Companies Act, but even by those taxpayers who may not be falling within the ambit of Companies Act. But why it is incurred? If you look at several literature on CSR, how the concept has evolved and how it is evolving, it is ultimately for a businessman. Now the world has reached a stage where they consider every citizen of the society as a stakeholder in that business. Gone are the days where the idea was that in a business only stakeholder is the customer and the businessman. Now stakeholder is a larger society. To ensure that all the stakeholders get benefited from the activity which is undertaken by a businessman incurs that kind of expenditure, like he may give some money to construct a school near his factory. He may give money to maybe put some benches in that school or maybe some electrification of that school. He may incur certain expenditure related to health care of the persons who may be residing within the vicinity of that factory. Not single one of them would be an employee of his business. That school may not have any connection with the business. But still it is done to ensure that the entire society as a stakeholder gets benefited from the activity that he is undertaking. So it is in the course or furtherance of business. So this is where that test becomes relevant. That what should be in the course or furtherance of business is the expenditure incurred by a businessman, not necessarily resulting into increase in sales or increase in profit, but an expenditure incurred to maintain colder relations with all the stakeholders with that business. And therefore, it is in that context that this term has to be interpreted. So, in a nutshell, if you find that certain expenditures have been incurred by a taxpayer and those are part of his official books, a presumption has to be that it is in the course or furtherance of business. Unless, of course, there are findings by the officer to say that, look, that you have purchased a TV and TV is not in your premises, it is at your home. So that if that findings are there, then it's a different matter. If, let us say, there is express bar under section 17, then in that situation, even if you cross bar of 16(1), the credit may get blocked under 17. We will look at those aspects later. But a normal presumption is that whatever he has incurred, it is in the course or furtherance of business, and therefore there is no need to justify that by linking it with sales or with profit. If those are the arguments canvassed by the department in giving you a show cause notice saying that we will not allow CSR expense, will not allow marketing expense, will not allow branding expense, will not allow expense related to setting up of your subsidiary, because they may say this subsidiary has no business in your legal entity. It's a separate legal entity which is getting formed. So those expenditure, what that has to do with your supply or what your turnover is, because it has no direct relation with your turnover. Or you are incurring an expense to, let us say, make an investment into another company. There can be a lot of expenditure that you may be incurring in making that investment. There would be advisor fees, legal fees, so many expenses. If it is a listed company you are acquiring, then there are a whole host of charges that you will end up paying. Now, by making that investment, what you would derive would be dividend or capital gain when you sell off those investments. Those are the only two streams of income that probably you would derive. But that would not mean that that expenditure is not in the course or furtherance of my business, because that acquisition of subsidiary was to further the business as a whole of me having capital and deploying that capital to increase the assets or wealth of my business. So it is in that context that this test has to be applied. Now, where the credit can be claimed, section 16(1) says that what you are eligible, that amount would be credited into the electronic credit ledger of such person. So we are in an era where technology is playing, I don't know, a better role or a worse role. In fact, every week when I am before the High Court, there are n number of cases where taxpayers are having grievance with the portal. There may be issues where they by mistake have filed wrong 3B and now they want to revise it, and the officers say we are helpless, the higher officer says we are also helpless, the board says we are also helpless, GST council says we are also helpless, Infosys says don't come to us, we don't know what to do. So everyone is helpless. So ultimately then cases go to the court. Even judges are sometimes now expressing their frustration that we are passing the orders to amend the portal, but 2 years, 3 years have gone and still nothing has happened. And then people are then forced to find their own ways of exercising those rights of availing the credits in 3B, and then tomorrow department is going to question those also decisions, that how on what basis you have availed in 3B. When the court says that we will open the portal, we will allow revision of return, how you can do that and circumscribe that decision of the court by doing it indirectly. So it takes time. There are issues, but in any case, portal has to be respected, because law itself says that amount that you are availing has to be credited into the ledger. Only then it becomes a valid claim. How it can be availed? Section 41(1), which prior to 1st October 2022 was formulated in a situation where the government had envisaged matching of the credits between the supplier and the recipient. Now, from 1st October 2022, the entire matching has clearly been given a statutory go by. It has been put to a death Now, no matching will happen ever in GST law. That is why they amended Section 41. Original Section 41 says whatever credit you are claiming is provisional credit, because that was supposed to then go into the process of matching, and then the final amount would have been derived. Now, since that matching itself has been given a go-by with effect from 1st October, in fact, in my view, that matching has been given a go-by from 1st July 17 itself. Of course, there will be a conflict. We will look at that when we go to 16.2. But at least from 1st October, now the statute is very clear. Section 41(1) says, whatever you avail now in your return, that would be your credit, not provisional credit. So, final credit. Then, if it is wrong, department will then issue a so-cause notice if they find that that credit is not eligible. So, 42, 43 and 43 capital A, which dealt with matching, all of that have been omitted now from the statute with effect from 1st October 22. Now, why do you avail the credit? Certainly, you don't avail the credit just to every day in the morning to see the credit in the credit ledger. You avail the credit because you want to utilize the credit. So, that is where Section 49(4) says that amount available in the credit ledger can be used for making any payment towards the output tax. Now, this is subject to conditions and restrictions. Now, what are those conditions and restrictions? First is manner of utilization. Section 49, read with 49A, B and Rule 88A gives a manner that first you pick IGST, exhaust IGST, then you pick C and S, and then use it in whatever manner that you want to use it. C cannot be used against S and vice versa. So, those are all conditions prescribed in law. Then there are conditions coming through rules as to utilization of the credit. First is this Rule 86A, where they block your ledger. They feel that you are suspicious, your credits are suspicious, so they block the ledger, which prevents you from utilizing the credit. It is not a recovery of credit, please understand. 86 capital A provides for blocking of the ledger, credit ledger, preventing you from utilizing the credit. Now, there is an issue that whether negative blocking can be done. So, for example, I have availed 1 crore wrong credits. I have also utilized those credits. In that return, whatever I filed, I showed 1 crore ITC, 1 crore outward tax. That 1 crore stands now gone from my ledger. 6 months down the line, department finds that 1 crore was illegally availed. It was a bogus purchase, and therefore, this credit ledger has to be blocked. So, they put a block on my credit ledger on the portal of 1 crore. Today, my balance is 0, because that 1 crore already I have utilized. Balance is 0. So, they put a negative. It is considered as a negative blocking. Negative 1 crore will come in the ledger. So, tomorrow if I avail 25 lakhs, I will not be allowed to utilize it, because the 25 lakh would be adjusted against my opening 1 crore negative figure. So, I keep availing. I cross 1 crore, then after whatever is excess, only that would then I be permitted to technically utilize. So, that is the negative blocking. Gujarat High Court took a view in Samay Alloys that is the negative blocking that you are doing is contrary to 86A. 86A uses the language that what you can block is the credit available and what was alleged to have been wrongly availed. That 1 crore is no longer available with me. I have utilized that 1 crore, it has gone. So, now what you will do by blocking my legitimate next 1 crore of my credit? Because ultimately what happens if 1 crore already the wrong credit has been utilized? What now you are blocking is my legitimate credit of next 1 crore that I am now going to avail, and your system will not allow me to utilize it. So, on that ground, Gujarat High Court took a view that negative blocking is contrary to Rule 86 capital A. Calcutta High Court took a view in NMD engineering works that no, negative blocking can be done. They read the word available as available at the relevant point in time. They say 1 crore was available when he took the credit. So, that gives the right to the department to block it. After 6 months also they can block it, irrespective of whether at that point in time that 1 crore is available or not. So, that is the reasoning given by the Calcutta High Court. Now, that matter is there in the Supreme Court. Department has gone against Gujarat and the taxpayer has gone against Calcutta. So, now let us see what happens. But certainly, if you come across a situation of negative blocking, certainly you can file a writ asking the court to examine the provision and maybe remove the negative blocking. Another restriction is 86 capital B, which says that minimum 99%, maximum 99% can only be paid through credit ledger in certain situations. Minimum 1% has to be compulsorily paid through cash ledger. So there are certain situations given, and there are certain exceptions also given, that if, let us say, two of your directors are having income tax returns, they are filing the returns, total income is tax is more than 1 lakh, then these provisions will not hit you. So those are the again another set of restrictions. So these are the restrictions which does not say that credit is illegal. Please understand. These are the restrictions which says utilization would not be permitted, because we have a suspicion that credit could be illegal, and therefore if we allow to utilize it, you will then create a further chain. That was the thought process, that 1 crore is illegal. Now if you don't stop, you will give 1 crore fake invoice to another person. He will again in turn generate more fake invoice and give it to third persons, and this chain will keep on continuing. And then it becomes difficult for the department to trace the entire chain. So they thought, let us say that when we find 1 crore, we will block it. Unfortunately, in none of the cases that I have come across, the blocking happens in time. Blocking always happens after a comfortable period of 3 months, 6 months, because then only department gets all those analytics, the figures and everything, and then they realize that this what 1 crore was availed was ultimately on a fake invoice, on an alleged fake invoice. So these are the situations. Now let us look at conditions for the entitlement of ITC and issues. So one, what we discussed is eligibility. So if it is for the business, whatever tax has been charged, you are eligible for the credit. Where you avail it in your credit ledger, whether you are free to utilize it, generally free, but if you are falling in any of those conditions and restrictions, then that would apply, and accordingly that credit ledger utilization would get restricted. Another issue that also was there was, can we make a pre-deposit utilizing the balance available in the credit ledger? Recently, Bombay High Court took a view that you can do it, and that is the right view, because if you see again section 49(4), what it says, the amount available in the electronic credit ledger may be used for making any payment towards output tax. So the High Court took a view that, look, let us say there is a credit balance available of 1 crore. There is a liability of outward tax of, let us say, 10 crores. Now, to go into an appeal under 107, I need to deposit 10% of the tax dues, disputed tax dues. Let us say, disputing entire 10 crores. So I need to deposit 1 crore. Now that 1 crore forms part of the 10 crore liability, which is towards output tax. And therefore the Bombay High Court took a view that when the law permits the utilization of credit towards discharge of any output tax, then any consequence falling from that outward tax, in this case a deposit which is required to be paid for exercising the statutory right of appeal. So that is a consequence flowing from the output tax liability, and therefore it should also be read into this word output tax mentioned in 49(4), and therefore even a pre-deposit should be can be made by utilizing the credit balance available in the ledger. Now let us look at conditions. So eligibility we are done, now entitlement. So 16(2) says whatever is there in this section, notwithstanding that, no registered person shall be entitled to the credit of any input tax in respect of any supply of goods or services or both to him, unless, then there are a set of conditions. So the way the law is drafted, it is negatively worded. It says, unless you satisfy this, you shall not be entitled to the credit. Now, the law expressly does not use the word entitled to taking of the credit. It says entitlement to the credit. The word taking is not there. Now there is a purpose behind it. The purpose is like this. When you look at this condition, there are certain conditions that you need to fulfill before taking the credit. And then there are certain conditions that you need to fulfill after taking the credit. Ultimately, if you fulfill both, then you become eventually entitled for the credit, and that credit then cannot be disputed by the department. So that is how the law has been formulated. So first condition is you should have a tax invoice. Now Rule 36(1) gives a list of documents: tax invoice, debit note, bill of entry, so on and so forth. Now issue is like this. Recently we came across a situation where someone brought a case where the case was that he has received goods from, let us say, supplier A. Now, supplier A has issued a tax invoice under Rule 46, a normal tax invoice, charging tax, indicating all the particulars on that invoice. Now, this client, when he went on the portal, he found that supplier A is liable to generate an e-invoice. It is available. The data, if you search, if you put the GSTIN, the system will show whether that particular supplier is falling within the ambit of generating the e-invoice. So, it was found that yes, supplier A was supposed to issue the e-invoice. Now, this is a transaction of 21-22, which fact was known only now. Now, the query is that can the credit be denied in respect of this transaction on the ground that the supplier A, in our case, has failed to issue an e-invoice. He has only issued a tax invoice under 46, not in accordance with the procedure under 48. 48 says, in a normal situation, tax invoice. In a situation where government through notifications specifies a certain category of supplies in respect of which particulars in GST form INV01 along with IRN is required to be uploaded on the electronic portal and required to be mentioned in the invoice, and in that situation, that is the only manner given in Rule 48 to issue the invoice. And Rule 48 goes one step further. Rule 48.5 says, invoice issued contrary to 48.4 is not a valid invoice. 48.4 says, in a situation we will prescribe those who are liable to issue invoice. 48.5 says, in a situation where we have prescribed that this person is required to issue an invoice, if he issues an invoice contrary to this provision, then that will not be considered as an invoice at all. So 48.5 goes to that extent. So the query was that can the department tomorrow say that, look, under clause A of 16.2, what is a valid document to avail the credit? Invoice. What is that invoice which is prescribed? When you look at Rule 36.1, Sub-Rule A, an invoice issued in accordance with provisions of 31. What section 31.1 says in the context of supply of goods? That issue an invoice in the manner prescribed. What is that manner prescribed in Rule 48? In our situation, e-invoice. So department can say that, look, your invoice is not an invoice issued under 31. Therefore, it is not a valid document under clause A of 36.1. And therefore, you don't have a valid document under clause A of 16.2. And therefore, you are not entitled for the credit. That would be the line of reasoning which we foresee would come in times as we progress. Now, one view is certainly to agree to that line of reasoning and say that, okay, reverse the credit because now there is no possibility to avail now credit of last year. Even if today the supplier may remedy his violation and today he may issue an e-invoice indicating the original document date. Let us say the original date was 30th June 21. So today he may issue an IRN which will be of today. Document date could be last year, actual invoice date. And he may remedy his breach by saying that, look, before the department comes, he has complied with 48.4. But what happens to the receiver? Receiver now today cannot avail the credit related to last year. So in that situation, today the document he has related to claiming of the credit for last year is only the invoice issued in June 21, which is the invoice contrary to 48.4. Now in that situation, what should be the stand? In my view, I will share my view. I would say that look at proviso to 36.2. And there is a purpose behind this proviso. What 36.2 says? It says input tax credit shall be availed by a registered person only if all the applicable particulars as specified in the provisions of Chapter 6. Chapter 6 includes all these Rule 46, 48, what we discussed, are contained in the said document. So one can say IRN is something which should have been there, which is a particular flowing from Chapter 6, and that should be part of the invoice. Then only I become eligible for taking the credit. However, this creates an exception by way of a proviso. What the proviso says, that provided that if the said document does not contain all the specified particulars, but contains the details of amount of tax charge, description of goods, service, total value of supply, GSTIN of supplier in the recipient and place of supply in case of interstate supply, then input tax credit may be availed by such registered person. Now, what is the purpose? Purpose is what the rule makers have identified are the particulars in an invoice which go into the substance of the claim. For example, the tax charged, the value, description, GST of both the parties to the contract. Those are very vital to establish your claim of credit. All other particulars are given a go by in saying that if that is not there, you can still avail the credit if you can substantiate that it was actually an inward supply to you. So my view is this proviso can come to the rescue in a situation what we discussed. Otherwise, what will happen in an e-invoice situation, this proviso would become redundant. Because if we say without e-invoice, if person has issued an invoice is not a valid invoice at all, then this 36.2 itself becomes negatory. Now, that cannot be the harmonious view considering 36.1 read with 36.2. 36.2 never says that 36.2 will not apply to a situation under 48.4, which is a situation of issuing e-invoice. So, in my opinion, the credit should be admissible, but certainly as a checkpoint, one should take care that one should ask the taxpayer to run their vendors. There are systems available which can indicate that who are the vendors who are covered under ambit of e-invoice. This will become more serious as government reduces the limits, because more serious defaults will come in lower turnover taxpayer base. Higher turnover taxpayer base normally are aware about these provisions. But now that limit, when it comes to 10, it has come to 10 crore. It will come now to 5 crores in a short span of time. So those are the taxpayers who would be struggling with all these e-invoice compliances. Many would not be even aware that they are within the ambit of e-invoice. They will keep on issuing tax invoices. People will keep on claiming the credits. And then 2 years down the line, this issue would suddenly arise. So therefore, as a checkpoint, you can ensure that all your vendors who are liable to issue an e-invoice are only issuing the e-invoice so that you don't get into this issue of 16.2a. 16.2a deals with furnishing of the details of the supply in GSTR 1. So this is an amendment which has now come into effect from 1st January 22. Now Rule 36.4 also got amended saying that look, furnishing the invoice is not the only requirement. We thought okay, in GSTR 1 if someone has furnished credit, we satisfy this condition. Rule 36.4 goes to one more extent and says that look, furnishing and communication. In what form? To be. Only in that situation you can avail the credit. That is why that 11th becomes very relevant. On 12th also he has furnished details in 1. But it has not been communicated to me in 2B. Because 2B generates data based on filings done up to 11th. So in that situation I cannot avail the credit of an invoice which has been put into GSTR 1 by the vendor but after 11th. Because it satisfies 16.2AA. But it fails to satisfy 36.4 clause B because there is an additional condition attached to that it should be communicated to you in 2B, which has not happened in that situation. So in that situation, this rule would apply and credit for that particular month would get restricted. Of course, you can then avail it in the next cycle. B deals with condition related to receipt of goods or services. There is an explanation to say that in a situation where, let us on your behalf, someone else is receiving the goods or services, then also credit would be eligible. It may happen your employee may incur some expense and he gets an invoice. Now, receipt may be by him, but explanation says not necessary you should have received it. Even your recipient or your any other person on your direction, if they are receiving the goods or services, you satisfy this condition given in clause B. BA, this is that extra clause which has been added, imposed but not effectively imposed. While I am saying that, what it says, that even after communication in 2B, still BA says that we will notify through section 38 and the rules that we can formulate, wide exercise of power under 38, which are the credits which are still restricted even after appearing in 2B. So this amendment has now been brought into force from 1st of October. It is not yet effective because under 38 government has yet not prescribed on what are those suppliers whose credit even after appearing in 2B would still remain to be restricted from the point of view of the recipient. Largely the thought process is if someone has taken a new registration, they have a doubt that this party may have taken registration only to commit the fraud. See, our country is having that mindset. I don't know why it came to us. But in everything, we'd have doubts. Everything, even if a small issue, if you go to the department, I'm sure you all are experienced. Even a small point, if you have to prove, you have to give n number of justifications, and then only the doubt gets cleared. So this is the doubt which resulted into BA, that we feel those suppliers who are having a difference in 1 and 3B of more than 20%, we feel those are doing some wrong. Their own circular says you can do wrong and correct it in the next month. But then the law, the 38 says no. If you are doing wrong, unless you correct it, we have a doubt. So credit we will remain restricted. Only once you clear, then we will allow your counterparty to avail those credits. But till date, thankfully, those restrictions have not yet been notified. So as on date, the law is BA remains ineffective. In law, but ineffective. C. C is very interesting. C has now undergone a huge change with effect from 1st of October. What C says? Subject to provisions of section 41, the tax charge should have been actually paid by the supplier. Earlier there was also reference of 43A, now that has been removed because as we discussed, all that matching, everything now has been gone. So what section 41 says? It has also been amended. One amendment we already discussed where instead of provisional credit, now it is final credit in the return, what you avail. From your side, it is final. From their side, everything is semi-final, but from your side, everything is final. 41.2, now that is very interesting. 41.2 says the credit of input tax availed by a registered person under subsection 1, that is in your return, in respect of such supplies of goods or services, the tax payable whereon has not been paid by the supplier shall be reversed along with applicable interest by the said person in such manner as may be prescribed. And then the proviso says, if the supplier makes the payment, then the recipient can re-avail the credit what was reversed in the manner prescribed. So now the law as on date says that once an invoice is furnished, appears in 2B, your claim of credit is final under 41.1. Once that is final, later on in the manner prescribed, they are yet to prescribe how that machinery would work, but in that manner, if it is found that some supplier has not paid the tax, then it can come back to you and say that now under 41.2, you are supposed to reverse it with interest, and then under proviso to 41.2, you may re-avail it when we recover that tax from the supplier. Now, though that machinery is yet to be formulated. So, as on date, once an invoice is there in 2B, your credit becomes final under 41.1. Unless 41.2. Now, 41.2 cannot be exercised subjectively. It says in the manner prescribed. So, tomorrow officer cannot say that for November, I have information that your so-and-so supplier has not paid the tax and therefore you reverse it under 41.2. Whether law has given you that manner to undertake that kind of investigation? No. 41.2 as on date has not given any such manner to the officer to undertake such subjective assessments. So unless a concrete machinery is not formulated in rules as to how the officers are supposed to find out the defaulters, how they are supposed to make an attempt to recover from them, how they are then supposed to communicate to the recipient, how they are supposed to ask the recipient to reverse it and then keep that as a provisional money lying with them, return that once they find that they have recovered the actual amount from the concerned supplier. So entire that machinery has to be established. As we speak, there is no machinery established under 41.2. So now, Dipasi, up till now, before 1st October, department in their show-cause notice used to always say 41 provisional credit, 42 matching, they used to write and say that he has not paid the tax, therefore credit is not allowable. Because at that point in time, 16.2C was in respect of 41, but old 41, which dealt with provisional credit and then matching. So there some ambiguity was there in law. Now the law is made absolutely clear from 1st October. So now onwards, I think the issues would stand settled. Of course, what we discussed earlier would still remain an issue, that whether simply because the supplier has not paid the tax, can that be the ground to deny credit, to ask me to reverse credit under 41.2. But for that reason, 41.2 has to be challenged before the court, saying that it is contrary to the constitutional right under Article 14. So, if you succeed, 41.2 gets struck down or read down, then that argument can be taken. Except that 41.2 as it is stands, but in absence of machinery, it is not yet effective. D, here's fund is the return. So certainly, because as we saw in 16.1, credit is to be credited into the ledger. Now there are decisions in GSTR 1 also, we have now decisions where they say that rectification should be permitted even beyond the due date, just to ensure that that mismatch is not there. 3B rectification already we have a circular which says under you can do that. And we have decisions where the courts have taken a view that merely on mismatch with 2A, you cannot deny the credit. So we have Kerala High Court decision, Madras High Court decision, where they have said that 2A cannot be the base to deny the credit. So these are those decisions of pre-GST era where they have said that such provision allowing credit only if tax has been actually paid by the supplier is contrary to Article 14, Arise India's case, where the department's SLP stands dismissed. Then we have a Rajasthan High Court. We have a contrary decision of Maharashtra in the case of Mahalakshmi, where the court, Maharashtra High Court, Bombay High Court has taken a view that this condition is, see, ultimately in all these cases, the principle is like this, that bad facts will make a bad law. In Mahalakshmi case, the facts were so bad. There was a complete case where the genuineness itself was doubted. And that case went to the High Court. And therefore, in that context, High Court took a view that, look, unless state gets the revenue, you cannot, credit, what state is saying credit is not allowed is fine. In Arise India's case, the facts were there was no genuineness which was doubted, only mismatch was the case. So in that situation, High Court say that, look, merely on mismatch, you cannot ask the recipient to reverse the credits. Circular trading, fake invoicing is ultimately a question of fact. It is not just a question of law. Saying that this is a fake invoice is not sufficient. There are legal provisions as to how evidence can be gathered, how cross-examination is required to be granted, how ultimately the fact-finding has to be done, and how ultimately it has to be established whether you had actually received the goods or services. See, payment, non-payment and fake invoicing are two separate issues. Please don't club those issues. Department is in a habit of clubbing those issues. Both are independent issues. Non-payment is a situation where transaction is genuine but payment has not been done by the supplier to the government. Fake invoice is a situation where the basic provision of receipt of goods or service itself is not satisfied. What we saw earlier, there is a condition that you should have received the goods or services of the invoice on which you are availing the credit. That itself stands unsatisfied. So that is where the issue lies. Now, there is a circular on fake invoicing, Circular 171, which came to be issued, where they have given 3 situations. It's a wonderful circular, I must say. What it says, they say that for an easy understanding, let us say there is a manufacturer of fake invoicing, there is a trader of fake invoicing, and there is a consumer of fake invoicing. What circular envisages? A manufacturer of fake invoicing, it means I have no inward supplies, no inward transactions, no ITC. I have just manufactured it, given to the trader and filed the return and then vanished. Either I have taken registration in the name of the driver, in the name of maid, and then I have vanished. Now that possibility is not there much because now stringent checks are there. Registrations are also not that easily granted. So, but this was a case where the system was not that clear. So in that situation, what the circular says, a manufacturer, if he has issued an invoice, what you can recover as a state? You cannot recover tax. If you recover tax, you are creating a contradiction. How? On one side, you are saying he has only issued the invoice and he has not made the supply. On the other side, if you recover tax under 74, you are saying he has made the supply because the levy is on supply. The tax is on supply. So you cannot recover tax on supply if you are saying that he has not supplied. So circular says in a manufacturer, you cannot create a levy under 74. You impose a penalty under 122 of issuing an invoice without supplying the underlying goods or services. So only penalty on the manufacturer. On a trader, they say what trader is doing? Getting an invoice from A and giving the invoice to C. Neither receiving actual goods nor giving actual goods. So in that situation, circular again here what you can recover? You cannot recover tax. There is no supply. You can recover penalty. But here the circular says you have to recover penalty twice. One for the commission of an offense of availing the credit without underlying supply, and another offense of supplying the invoice without underlying goods or service. So two offense, so two penalties. So that is trader. Consumer of an invoice. C. For a consumer, they say, look, consumer ultimately has absorbed that invoice and ultimately he would have made genuine supplies. He may need an invoice to adjust his profit. He may need an invoice for some. As you all know, all the government contracts are there. So he may need an invoice for certain demands. So in that situation, he is a consumer of an invoice because he has now not further given a fake invoice. He has given a genuine invoice, against a genuine supply. In that situation, what can be recovered is input tax credit because now the tax has been wrongly availed, which was never the tax in the entire chain. So in that situation, circular says that in C, officers are required to issue a notice recovering credit under 74 and penalty under 74. Then no penalty again under 122 because 75(9) says if a penalty is imposed under 74 for the offense, for the same offense, another penalty cannot be imposed under 122. Because 122 also allows imposition of penalty for committing an offense of availing credit without underlying supply. But 74 since also contains a provision of imposing penalty equal to the wrong availed credit. So you cannot impose penalty twice, and that is flowing from the statute itself. 75 itself says that is basically a principle of double jeopardy. For a same offense, you cannot punish the person twice. So that is what is there. Now, why this is interesting is that please examine your show cause notices in these situations. If the show cause notices are not using correct provisions to impose or recover whatever is tax or penalty, as the case may be A, B or C, on that very ground those notices may not survive. So that is why it becomes relevant to see that under what provisions there should not be any contradiction in the notice. I hope you are getting the point. If there is a contradiction, on one side they are saying our outward supply is acceptable to us. ITC is what we are doubting. But you are a trader. In that situation, your contrary plea can be that, look, transaction is genuine, if that is the fact, or that credit already stands reversed because since I have already given the goods, so-called what you are alleging to be fake goods, to someone else. In that situation, now how you can recover ITC from me because that already stands debited from my account against the invoice that I have issued to the counterparty. So please examine the facts. Please very carefully read the notice and then come to a conclusion as to how you need to respond. Now this is again something which will haunt everyone. 16.2 proviso. Two provisos are there which says that if a recipient fails to pay to the supplier other than cases under reverse charge, the amount towards value of supply along with tax payable thereon within this period of 180 days from the date of invoice, then that amount equal to ITC shall be added to his output tax liability along with interest thereon in the manner as may be prescribed. And then when you make the payment, you can avail the credit of the tax whatever was earlier paid. So this is 16.2 provisos. Rule 37, earlier rule was there. Now that rule has been entirely recasted. This is the rule that what we are discussing is a rule that has now come into effect from 1st October 22. Now let us straight away go to the issues. First is validity of this proviso. Now why I am saying that proviso appears to be invalid? There are three grounds. One is a proviso is supposed to carve an exception from the main provision. That is the role of proviso. That a main provision says this is what is permitted or not permitted. Proviso creates an exception from what is permitted or otherwise from the main provision. That is how provisos are generally understood. Here when you look at 16.2, the main provision deals with the entitlement of credit. The main provision nowhere says payment to the supplier as a criteria for you to be entitled for the credit. That 16.2c is payment to the government, which is a separate issue. 16.2 nowhere says in all those 5 conditions that you have to pay to the supplier for you to become entitled for the credit. So main provision does not contain a situation where your entitlement is contingent on the fact of payment. And a proviso is created to say that if you have failed in making the payment, then that credit has to be added as or output tax. So there is a divergence. A proviso is totally independent from what the main provisions are talking about. So that is one ground to say that the proviso is invalid, because the proviso is supposed to create an exception to the main provision. Here main provision are silent. They are not imposing that condition. How can a proviso create an exception from that main provision? That is one. Second ground is, main provision contains the fact that the tax should have gone to the government under condition C. Now, if that fact is not disputed in the so-cause notice, that the supplier has not paid the tax to the government. Now, if that interest has already been met, then what can still be the grievance of the government against the taxpayer to say that still you are supposed to reverse the credit because you have not paid to the vendor within 180 days? See, a proviso has to be understood in the context of the intent behind bringing that proviso. And that brings us to the third ground. What appears to be the intent and what we find from the minutes of the GST Council meeting when this issue was discussed? They say that by doing this, we will incentivize the recipients to pay early to the suppliers so that suppliers can discharge the tax to the government. So that small suppliers generally are not put into a situation where on one side the customer is not paying him the tax, and the other side he has to pay the tax because tax is to be paid on a monthly basis. So that is the reasoning given. Now in a situation where that supplier has already deposited the tax, he is not having any grievance with the recipient to say that since you have not paid the money to me, that is why I have not been able to pay the tax to the government. That is why your condition C is not satisfied. So if you pay me, I will pay to the government, and then condition C stands satisfied. That is not the grievance. Both the parties are saying that we don't mind even if we get payment after, even if I give or he gets after 180 days. So these are the three grounds to challenge the validity of this provision. Another is the issue of statutory interpretation, failure to pay. Now, when you look at this language, fail to pay, what is used in this proviso, which is different from what was there in the Sanward credit rule. If you go to Sanward credit rule, rule 4, sub rule 7, it says non-payment. It does not say fail to pay. Now the term fail, dictionary definition means there should be a yardstick to pass, which I have not been able to clear and therefore I failed. When we say a student has failed, not because he has got 30. He has failed because he was supposed to get 40 and he has got 30. Then we say it is a failure. 30 in isolation is not a failure. 30 is an absolute number. I got 30 marks in an exam out of 100. That is a fact. A fact gets a qualification of fail or pass once I compare that with a certain yardstick that I have already imposed. A barometer of 40, 50. I don't cross that, I say yes, fail. If I cross that, I say yes, pass. So that is the true meaning of the word fail. So fail to pay within 180 days means there should be a barometer for the recipient to pay to the vendor within 180 days, and he has failed in making that payment, and therefore this proviso gets attracted. If that is not the case, in my opinion, the proviso would not get attracted because there is no failure to pay. The contract is like retention money, performance guarantee. These are the contracts where both the parties are in agreement to say that you hold our money for 5 years, 2 years, 3 years. Look at the performance of our machine, what we have supplied. And only if you are happy, then you release whatever balance amount is there. Is there a failure? There is no failure. There was no barometer. The barometer was to pay me after 2 years, and that stands satisfied. So in that situation, the word fail has to be understood. Now, validity of Rule 37. Again, we can expect another amendment in Rule 37. Why I am saying this? See, proviso, what we saw says, in a situation where there is a failure to make the payment of the value along with tax, then that tax has to be added to what? Output tax ledger. That was the provision. So earlier Rule 37 before this October amendment, first October amendment says, you report this in GSTR 2, we will add this as your outward liability and then you remit that liability. That was the mechanism. 2 never came. So they realized that we need to remove the reference to 2. So they have done that. In this amendment that have now come into effect is a prospective amendment from 1st October, where it says now you have to do it in 3B. What earlier you were supposed to do in 2, which was never there. 38(2) was never there. that would have been fine if the rule would have stopped at that. Rule further goes and says, look, in 3B what you have to do? Don't show this as an output tax liability. The rule says you reverse the credit in 3B. The Rule 37, the way it has been amended now, talks about expressly reversing the input tax credit. Section stands unamended. Section says, section states, section and rule appears to be two strangers. Section says, I am thinking of adding this in output tax. And the rule says, I am thinking of reversing this from ITC. Now, both are fundamentally different concepts. Output tax is defined in the GST law. You cannot mix those concepts and say that, okay, we are happy with getting the money, whether which way we get. Output, ITC reversal, that cannot be the correct approach. Law has to be very carefully drafted. Law cannot be based on a haphazard drafting and then leaving on the department and the taxpayers to derive meaning out of it and then to do whatever they want to do. That cannot be the ideal way for a country. So here now Rule 37 says add, reverse from ITC. Section still says add to output tax. Again there is a disharmony. So on that basis again the validity would get affected. So now this prospective amendment shows what? It shows that prior to 1st October there was no need for reversal. Because prior to 1st October there was a rule which says show in 2, we will take it to output tax liability ledger. That was not at all in force and therefore they made this prospective amendment with effect from 1st October 22. So before 1st October 22 it is now an accepted and admitted fact that Rule 37 was not operational. Otherwise why do you need this amendment of entirely recasting this 37? Another interesting aspect, earlier rule that way, see how they draft, God knows how they draft. Earlier Rule 37 says if you make proportionate payment within 180 days, to that extent you don't have to add that to the output liability. It is a logical way. 1 lakh plus 18,000 invoice, I have paid 50,000. So to that extent, pro rata, that part tax component embedded into that 50,000 is not to be added to my output tax liability. Only the balance portion is required to be added. Rule 37 completely misses that language, proportionate or partial. It says pay, if you don't pay, add entire value of ITC into, reverse the entire ITC. Now again something which is not in line with proviso. Because it is not in line with proviso because proviso says, the third proviso says, to the extent you pay, you can avail it. So to the extent means what? It means it recognizes the fact of proportionate reversal and proportionate re-availment. Otherwise the to the extent becomes meaningless. Interest. Now there is a question. Here the original, when the law was introduced, they say interest is to be paid. Council debated, council agreed that look, interest is too much of a burden. Let us just ask them to reverse the credit. The council issued a press release in 2018 saying that we are removing the interest liability on this reversal amount. Somehow that didn't find favor with the parliament or the state and therefore that amendment has never happened. So interest liability remains. However, earlier Rule 37 says since this was to be added to output tax, there was an express mention that interest is to be computed as per section 50 subsection 1 because 50 subsection 1 says if there is a failure to pay the tax, interest liability would accrue. So they say this is like tax because it is an outward tax, treated as an outward tax. Therefore, interest liability under 51 would get imposed from the date of availment, which was a logical connection. Now we have a situation where 37 says you have to reverse the ITC. And on the interest portion, the drafters would have seen section 50 and he would have got confused. Where to put this, 51 or 53? So he avoided that question itself. Like in CA exam also, we used to avoid certain questions saying that we need to get 50. So in that situation, we already know these 2-3 chapters I will skip, which are tough. So this is a tough question. So he skipped. In Rule 37, he says, the rule says, interest along with interest under section 50. Earlier 50 subsection 1 was referred because it was outward tax, which was logical. Now says we don't know what it is. So better we say only under section 50. Now when you go to section 50 subsection 1 says failure to pay the tax. Clearly it is not a failure to pay the tax now under Rule 37, revised Rule 37. So 50 subsection 1 gets negated. 52, it's a computation mechanism for interest, not relevant. 53, 50 subsection 3 says if you have wrongly availed and utilized the input tax credit, then interest liability would get imposed. Now, is it a case of wrong availment? I would say it is not a question of wrong availment, because when I avail the credit, I satisfied all the conditions of section 60. It is after availment that now I have been made to reverse it, because I have failed in making the payment to the vendor. So in my situation, in my submission, even 50 subsection 3 cannot be attracted in this situation. So they will have to again revise rule 37. In absence of that, the way right now it is, certainly it's difficult for this liability to be sustained. And last, this is very interesting, period of reversal. Look at the casualness of drafting. We thought that 160 days, 180 days expires in November. So in November 3B, I am supposed to do this. What rule says? No, not in November 3B. 3B of the succeeding month. So in December 3B, I have to give the effect. So in a way, 1 month additional interest gets imposed. Because November, I know by 20th December that these are the invoices where I need to reverse the ITC, if someone wants to do that. In that situation, rule says don't do it in November. Do it in the return of the succeeding month, which is December. So on 20th January, you do the reversal, not on 20th December, whereas the fact is of November. So again, something which requires to be recalibrated. So anyway, so these are, we have already High Court decision of the pre-GST era, Hindustan Zinc, where High Court has taken a view that if there is an agreement between the parties to retain some money, that cannot be ground to reverse the Sunvet. Recently, SISTAT also took a view. Let us say you have not done that. Can the department issue a show cause notice to recover the entire credit? No, only grievance department can have, because as on date, the fact could be that you would have paid to the supplier. Maybe after 180 days, but the fact remains that you would have paid to the supplier. Can that be recovered now? ITC cannot be recovered. What can maximum be recovered could be the interest liability. So that is a SISTAT view in transpolar logistics. Time limit 16.4 deals with time limits. Again, the 30th November issue is there. See, earlier, since the availment of credit is linked with the filing of the return, so earlier there was a logic to say the due date of September on annual return. There was a logic. If you file annual return before, data is final for that year, now don't make any corrections subsequent to that filing. That was understood. Or due date of September, so 20th October when you file the return, government wants to balance their account, government wants to know how much is unutilized, so they can then share that IGST portion between center and states. So that also can be understood, that that time limitation had some relevance. Now 30th November has no relevance, because on 30th November there is no return which is due on 30th November. And as we saw in section 41(1), credit can be availed on a self-assessment basis in the return that you file. So now in a situation, what we discussed at the start of my session, how do you deal with that situation? He has done the filing after 11th. Invoice relates to last year. How do you deal with that situation? 16.4 says you can still take it in 30th November. The way I believe we can have an answer is to write a letter right now on 27th, 28th, saying that this is the credit that I have availed. But in absence of your system allowing me to file the return, I will be reflecting this amount in the return that I will be filing on 20th of December. If that letter is of November before 30th, then I believe you have a very strong case to say that time you have taken the credit within the time limit given under 16.4. Now let us quickly look at restrictions. Now restrictions, see, restrictions are many, 17.5. 2 or 3 illustrations I want to take, 5 minutes and then I will end. 2 or 3 illustrations I want to take just to bring home how the restrictions are to be understood. See, you have a classic situation developing where if let us say you acquire a land which is a leasehold land, a long-term leasehold land, let us say of MIDC, from a original lessee. So there is an original lessee. That company is now no longer functioning, so they want to assign their rights in that leasehold land for the balance period out of the total period of 99 years to you. Now that assignment is a transaction which is leviable to tax because it is not a sale of land. They were having a leasehold rights. that they have now assigned to you. So it is a transaction which would have the GST element. So let us say 10 crore is the value of land. So there will be a 1 crore 80 lakh GST amount. Can you avail the credit of that 1 crore 80 lakh is the issue. Because ultimately it is at the end of the land. Can it be taken? Why I am indicating this, just to help you understand how to read 17. When you look at 17.5, especially clause C and D, what it says, services, this is a service. So services used for construction of an immovable property other than plant and machineries, even if it is for own use, it is restricted. Now that word for becomes very relevant. Is it a service for construction? The word for indicates a direct nexus with the service and the construction activity. When you are acquiring the leasing rights over an industrial land, to my mind it is a right not for construction, but it is a right for possessing that land for a certain tenure, which is permitted under the agreement. Once you possess that land, then it is up to you whether you want to do some construction or you want to keep it as it is. So the word for indicates a direct nexus between a service and the construction of an immovable property. This is a situation where there is no direct nexus. The nexus is between service and the possession, and after possession, the fact of whether any construction is undertaken or not undertaken on that land. So to my mind, credit should be admissible. Initially, we were having advance rulings which used to take a view that credit is not admissible. Recently, I came across one advance ruling which appears to have taken the right view that credit would be admissible. They have relied on 17.5 only, clause C and D, saying that it is only for construction which is restricted, not otherwise. So something that, this is how I believe you should read 17. Very strict interpretation is to be given to 17 because it is a restrictive provision. 16.1 is an enabling provision. Something which is taking away your right, which is actually a right granted by a statute, those provisions are to be interpreted very strictly. There is a series of decisions where the courts have upheld this proposition. 16.1 allows you the right to avail credit in respect of all goods and services used in the course or furtherance of business. 17.5, snatching away that right, has to be then very strictly construed. Another example just is like, for example, let us say there is a vehicle, there is a car, business asset. Car was purchased before GST. You have now undertaken repair, maintenance, insurance for that car. Is credit admissible? Is credit admissible? 17.5 clause A expressly says, other than less than 13, that vehicle itself is not entitled, the tax charge on that is not eligible for credit, and then AB says any expenditure related to that vehicle is also not eligible for credit. Certainly it is a vehicle below 13. Certainly there is an expenditure in connection with that vehicle. Is the credit still blocked? In my mind it is not blocked. Why? If you minutely read AB 17.5, what it says, what credit is blocked is not in respect of vehicle having capacity below 13 or 13 less. It says credit in respect of expenditure in respect of vehicle indicated in A. Now, which vehicle is indicated in A? The vehicle which is supplied, which is purchased in the GST regime, on which tax has been charged, and that input tax credit is restricted in clause A. So, a vehicle purchased prior to GST regime is not falling under clause A, because there was no tax charge on the supply of that vehicle. So since it is not falling under clause A, expenditure related to vehicle under clause A, that AB restriction would not apply in that situation. So that is again another example. How do you read the third example? Could be, let us say there is a corporate event banquet. What is restricted is outdoor catering, food, beverage and outdoor catering. Indoor catering is not restricted. Catering with rent is a separate service by itself. You cannot say catering with rent is outdoor catering. If you see the classification scheme of the service, you will find a separate identification of service where the catering is with hall rent. It is not considered as an outdoor catering service. So what is restricted is only an expenditure on food, beverage and outdoor catering, not on any other service. So again something that one has to look at. So this is the last slide. What are the checkpoints? Now, as you would have understood, in GST, a lot of things are fluid. So there cannot be a stereotypical checkpoint. But what I have tried to gather is my thoughts of how we look at this provision, how we look at the issue. One is you should spend a lot of time in critically understanding the business. Please don't be in a hurry to judge whether credit is admissible or inadmissible. Why critically understanding the business is relevant? Because many times, so many facets of that transaction are known to you when you understand the reason behind why that businessman has undertaken that expenditure. Like, for example, employee compensation, insurance. Now, the word insurance, if you see, you may find that, okay, health, medical, blocked. So, no credit admissible. But this is not an insurance. It is towards health of the workers, but not to offset the health cost of that employer. It is to offset the compensation that is otherwise liable to pay to that employee. There is a law in India which says that if accident happens at your premises, you have to compensate the employee for meeting the cost of the treatment. To offset that liability, the businessmen take an insurance which is worded as a compensation policy. It is ultimately towards health. But it is not to meet the direct cost of health, it is to meet the compensation obligation which is imposed on that employer. And to mitigate that, he is taking that policy. So, once you understand this business aspect, you will perhaps reach in certain situations a different conclusion. So, understand the business. Then take an overview of the record keeping, because you need to understand how clients are maintaining the records related to input tax credit. You have to look at contracts, especially in a situation where certain credits are out of unusual transactions. Then, once you have gathered all these facts, you start applying the rules. Which are the rules? As we saw, entitlement 16, eligibility 16.2, limitation 16.4, and restriction 17. These are the only 4 parameters in which you need to test the admissibility of the credit. Once you apply the rules, you examine the issue, because this applying the rules would not give you straight jacket yes and no. Please understand, yes and no would be there in regular situations. There would be situations where the facts, law would be ambiguous. In that situation, you have to identify the issues. Once you identify the issues, start looking at the facts, the contract, the way accounting has been done. Accounting is also very important. Let me tell you, the way accounting is done also indicates the nature of that transaction for you to enable you to take a position on that transaction. Then apply the law, gauge the risk, because every client is not capable of taking that risk of litigation. So there are situations where you need to have a professional judgment to decide how much risk is and what are the stake involved. Then take a position. Disclosure. This is very important. See, these last 2 points are something, if you can take from my session, I think it would meet the purpose. Disclosure. See, nobody reads 9(9)(c). Department, at least. We read, but department does not read. It is good that department does not read now. If you put a disclosure saying that this year we have availed credit of CSR of so and so, this year we have availed credit of leasehold land of so and so, nobody is going to read those lines in 9C. But this will save you a lot when department, because these are the expenditure which any which way will be known to them when they come for regular audits. You cannot, see, please kindly accept now the fact that department has now lot of information, lot of understanding. Gone are those days where you feel that, okay, they will only ask for purchase register, they will only ask for raw material invoice, capital goods invoice, and we will give them something else and they will go away. Those days are now over. There is lot of data, lot of understanding developing on that side. So these are the heads that they will, we have seen notices which have issued. They are expressly asking data on all those kinds of heads of expenditure, business promotion, CSR, any unusual expense they find. They are asking details. Fixed asset schedule, they are asking details for any disposals to understand the ITC implications. So, if you have indicated the fact in 9C, which nobody will read now, maybe read afterwards, when they actually come for audit and then they start 9C and then they find that there was a note given saying that you have availed so and so credits. First, they cannot invoke extended period of limitation. So if after 3 years, if they are coming, the demand gets time barred, whatever be the merits. They cannot impose penalty because this is a declaration that you have given. You have not hidden a fact to say that this is a case of evasion or suppression. So these are very two big advantages that you derive, and there is no negative side. You don't be in that belief that if you write tomorrow they will come. 9C, thousands of 9Cs are filed in this due date season. Do you think they would read every 9C and then decide whom to audit, whom not to audit? Not possible. So disclose. And last, avail and reverse under protest. People feel that, see, whenever we write a protest letter, department says there is no provision of protest in GST law. So don't give these letters to us. We say, no, it is our right. You may not agree with that letter. You acknowledge that letter and we will see. So we take the credit and reverse it under protest, inviting them to issue a show cause notice that these are the disputed credits. We have availed, but we have some apprehensions. So to avoid further interest liability, we are disclosing it and we are reversing it, but under protest. We are seeking a show cause notice because we want this issue to get adjudicated. And post adjudication, if we ultimately succeed, then we reserve our right to re-avail the credit. Why this will help you? Because this will avoid the limitation issue. Because 3 years down the line, Supreme Court may say this was allowed. Now you cannot then look at your records and there say that, oh, I missed this. Now I can take it. Now that 16.4 time limit has come into play. So do that. If you avail reverse, do it under protest. It is a valid way for a taxpayer to exercise the right and at the same time to limit the liability. If you see the decision of Supreme Court in India Cement, it was a 1985 decision in the context of excise law where there was no express provision of protest neither in the act nor in the rules. And there Supreme Court has said that doing anything under protest in tax laws is a right, is a judicious right, not a statutory right. Statutory right, certainly it is not there because in statute there is no provision. But it is a judicial right because this is the right on the basis of which a taxpayer can save his interest and at the same time avoid further liability. So this is something that you must keep in mind. So with that I again thank the Pune branch to the organizers for for inviting me and all of you for a very patient listening.
Thank you, sir, for the guidance. Mind-blogging, isn't it? I now request CA Pritesh Manoj, sir, for a vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to propose a vote of thanks. And absolutely, it was an honor to have you, sir. With your knowledge, I guess, a lot of queries which arises in our daily routine practices will get solved. And I guess everyone will agree to this. And one session was not enough, I guess. So I hope to have another session at Pune branch. And I hope you don't mind coming back, sir. Yes. So thank you so much for coming all the way from Ahmedabad and sharing your valuable knowledge. Thank you to CA Abhay Desai, sir. And also thank you to all the participants who have come on Sunday, which has to be spent somewhere else. But you have managed to come here for gaining some extra knowledge. So thank you everyone from the Pune branch. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I also take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, Relion Softtech Limited, Logitax, Excel Infosoft Solutions Private Limited, Taxman Publications. Please visit the stalls, they are there downstairs. The WRC reference manual for 22-23 is also available at the registration counter. Please visit it. Beverages are waiting for us, so let us take a quick break. Let us break for tea and see each other in 15 minutes. Thank you. Let us begin with the second session, recent developments and issues in GST. CACS LLB by qualification. CA Bimal Jain sir is the founder of A to Z Tax Corp LLP, a boutique indirect tax firm. Having more than 24 years of experience in indirect taxation, he specializes in all aspects of GST, CST, VAT, foreign trade policies, special economic zones, export-oriented units, to name a few. To his accolade, there is a Guinness World Record as a keynote speaker on largest taxation lesson on GST, attended by more than 4,500 participants, breaking the earlier record held by Japan. He, ha- he has remained the member and chairman of various indirect tax committees, and to name a few, the chairman of Indirect Tax Committee of PhD Chamber of Commerce, a member of ASSOCHAM, FICCI, and many more. He has been a special invitee of Indirect Tax Committee of ICA and ICSI. Today, we are going to witness the Best Speaker Award winner conferred by NIRC of ICI and ICAWAI, who has also been given the Young Achievers Award at Igniting Minds 2015. Welcome, sir. I now request CA Pranav Apte to welcome sir today. So as you said, I give you all the powers. It's all yours.
At the outset, let me thank Pune branch chairman, all managing committee members, inviting me at this national conference today. And topic, they said when they were discussing with me, Rajesh ji is available today? No? He's coming? When he was discussing with me, he said, which topic you want to deliberate? I said, जो बोलना है बोल दूंगा. जो बोलना है बोल दूंगा. So Rajesh ji said, then we will put topic like GST issues and latest and issues in GST. And I know that maximum of you know me in person. So rest assured, any question in GST, I will try my best that you get the answer. Subject to, there may be litigation. And second point, there is always debate. I know that wherever I go and I find participants, there are certain good participants. And they come with their questions. And they always make it a point, they would be asking same question to all the speakers. And who is the best speaker? Who is giving answer as per him? Am I right? So, disclaimer, I may not be right for you, but I will try to be right for you. So, we will pick up some of the good important pointers, which is latest and their age issues, burning issues in GST. No PowerPoint presentation. I really want each one of you to devote your time, even from the back. Mobile नहीं. देखिए अभी 1.5 घंटा मेरे को देने, हिंदी इंग्लिश चलेगा ना? दौड़ेगा, दौड़ेगा. मोबाइल अभी 1.5 घंटा अगर आप नहीं यूज करेंगे, I will make it a point. This turned out to be a best session for 2 days. लेकिन ये तभी होगा जब two-way communication, supplier and recipient. Government is not willing to. Government बोलती है प्यार करो, but एक तरफा प्यार करो. हाँ, that is how they are doing it, right? First topic of the day. Government has done away two-way communication. They are saying, Bimal, recipient, you all are my recipient today, and I am your supplier. You all would be dependent on me to get the credit. Yes, yes, that is what the provision all about. Henceforth onward, you have no choice. You have to be dependent on Bimal Jain to get the credit. So for that, you need to be cautious about, and you need to know what are the changes happening within the GST law, which is really eye-opener for all of us together. Start करते हैं. See, we have seen in past, when GST came July 1, 2017, lot many challenges. I was supplier. I used to file my GSTR1, but I have done a lot of mistake in the past. Sometime it was B2B supply, registered supplier to registered recipient, but I have captured as a B2C. Will it going to be reflected in your 2A or 2B? Yes or no? No. Instead of putting your GST number, I put the GST number of my neighbor. Is it going to be reflected in your 2A or 2B? No. It was interstate supply from Delhi to Maharashtra, Pune, interstate, IGST, but wrongly furnished as a intrastate in my GSTR1. Is it going to be reflected in your 2A or 2B? It will be, but ineligible. Am I right? I have paid the taxes through GSTR 3B, but I did not file GSTR 1. Is it going to be reflected in your 2A or 2B? No way. And we are having lot many queries pertaining to these pointers. So we will discuss those pointers and try to get the answer of it also, right? And you are free to ask any question, don't worry about. And as I said, 1 hour, 30 minutes completely given to me. So I really want to enjoy with all of you. So you should also enjoy with me. See, in GST for availing credit, we all know we started with the 4 conditions. As a buyer, you should have tax invoice copy. Am I right? Second, you must have received goods or services. Third, your supplier must have paid taxes. And there is challenge that you may have paid the amount to me. आपने तो मेरे को दे दिया, पर मैंने आगे जमा नहीं कराया, तो आपको क्रेडिट मिलेगा? हाँ या ना? कोई हाँ वाला? अच्छा, आप सब मानते हैं नहीं मिलेगा. अच्छा, कोई बीच में बोलते हैं मिल तो सकता है. हाँ, अभी इधर एमसीडी का इलेक्शन होगा तो आप आएगा ना, तो वो बोलेगा ऐसा होना चाहिए. On a lighter note, yes, we will discuss this pointer as well, and we'll discuss way forward also. And last, regularly filing GST return. It is for whom it referred, supplier regularly filing or recipient regularly filing? Okay, can we have voting today? How many of you say this provision, regularly filing GST return, it is for supplier to file? Raise your hands. And how many of you say recipient? एक बोथ वाले भी हैं. वो बोले ये लोग तो हो सकता है, they may be wrong. बोथ बोलने से मैं तो पास. Irony of GST, 5 years, it is for recipient regularly filing GST return. So those who have raised their hands for suppliers, so many, and those who still believe both, please wake up. Sometime we are not able to do quality services for the region, we do not know the provision. हम लोग को कई बार नहीं मालूम होता. But मैं एक चीज बताऊं आपको. Our fees and premium in fees comes only with the knowledge, experience. And I will give you some of the example that how we can expend our professional acumen and professional fees. Client will definitely pay. Sometime I get a challenge also. सर आप इतना चार्ज करेंगे, इतना ज़्यादा चार्ज. मैंने बोला आपको समोसा खाने हैं ना? वो बोलता हाँ खाने हैं. There are 2 shops, one is Agrawal samosa and one is Haldiram samosa. आपको कौन सा चाहिए? अगर हल्दीराम चाहिए तो आपको पैसा, but for that Haldiram we need to have content. And that content we need to have. That's the reason I said it is for recipient regularly filing GST return. Now we are getting lot many notices from the department. Credit availed by you in 3B is not matching with GSTR 2A. Am I right? Am I right? So what is your take? Such notices which you are getting, you have tax invoice copy, you have received goods and services, it is not reflected in your 2A for the region. I did the mistake, supplier did the mistake. He did not furnish B2B correctly, it was B2C, and time period gone to amend that. He did not furnish GST number correctly, it was Never's GST number. Interstate supply, you are having invoice for interstate. I have paid the taxes IGST but wrongly furnished as a intrastate. It is coming as a ineligible in your 2A. So please tell me whether your credit can be denied because it is not correctly coming in GSTR 2A. Say yes and no. Achha, again voting so that maja aa jaye. How many of you believe that these notices which is issued by the department that credit not matching with 2A, credit would be denied? How many of you believe credit would be denied? Raise your hands, credit would be denied. And see, इसमें तीसरी पार्टी नहीं होगी, एक हाँ और एक ना. इसमें बीच वाला both. See, so you have to take either side, either this side or this side. बीच में नहीं, बीच में difficult, समझ में नहीं आता कि इनको समझ में आया भी या नहीं आया. So how many of you believe credit is not available because not matching with 2A? Once again. And how many of you believe credit मिल जाएगा? Oh, पक्का. So many. So I endorse until 31st December 2021. So 1st January 2022 is the cutoff date. Matching with 2A was not a provision at all. This provision, fifth condition, that credit should match with GSTR 2B, got introduced only from 1st January 2022. So 2A was not the provision at all. So matching with 2A need not required. Even though it is not coming in your 2A, but still credit is available. I'm giving you one Supreme Court judgment to you. Bharti Airtel. And what was the issue? Listen very carefully. In that judgment, Bharti Airtel for the period July 17 to September 17, they filed their GSTR 3B. जब फाइल किया तो 3B, they have paid the taxes through e-cash ledger, 930 crore rupees. 930 crore रुपए कहाँ से दिए? E-cash ledger से. When October 2018, GSTR 2A came, they realized they were having enough credit for that impugned period, July 17 to September 17. They thought they have done the mistake. This credit was available to them. They could have utilized the credit account instead of paying through e-cash ledger. They have gone to Delhi High Court. My lord, we want to revise GSTR 3B for that impugned period, July 17 to September 17. For the region, court is asking why you want to revise it and what is the ground we should allow you. They said, my lord, as per GST law, there is an automated return system process. Supplier will file GSTR1 by 10th of next month. It will be auto-populated for you in your 2A. And when you are finalizing GSTR2 by 15th, you will add, modify and delete. Meaning thereby, if supplier has missed any transaction, you can add. Am I right? If supplier has done any mistake, you can modify. And delete means which is not related to you. Never's GST number. Add, modify and delete and then file GSTR2. So once you do add, modify and delete, it gets auto-populated for supplier and GSTR1A, which I have to accept or reject. And then I will file GSTR3. There were provision 37, 38, 39, 42, 43, 43A. They were provision for automated return system. They took the ground, my lord, 2A was not made available. Had it been available, from July 17, I would have taken credit. I could have used this credit instead of e-cash ledger. Since it is not made available by so-called government, now I should be allowed to revise my GSTR 3B. Delhi High Court understood the fact and they have allowed, okay, you can revise your GSTR 3B. So whatever you have paid through e-cash ledger, now you can pay through e-credit ledger. Department is not going to stop. They have gone to Supreme Court. In the Supreme Court, they have argued, my lord, taxpayer is being given option for payment of tax, either through e-cash ledger or through e-credit ledger. Once they have exercised their option, then it can't be, and they should not be allowed, first point. And second point, department took an argument, my lord, if they are allowed a revision of GSTR 3B, then whatever settlement of account has happened between center and state, on the basis of 3B filed by the taxpayer, then it will all get dismantled. Problem. My lord, can't be done. It is not possible. Then issue came up 2A. So this petitioner saying 2A was not available, my lord. That's the reason I could not take the credit which was eligible to me, available to me. Honorable Supreme Court has said, Bharti Airtel, 2A is mere facilitation. Mere facilitation. If you have satisfied the condition of section 16, subsection 2, you would have taken the credit. You didn't take. Now you can't come back. So you are not allowed to revise GSTR 3B. But the judgment is saying 2A is facilitation. Taking same argument, defending my case of scrutiny notices, that my 3B credit is not matching with 2A, I will say 2A is only facilitation by Bharti Airtel. Am I right in saying so? I have satisfied my 4 conditions. I am having invoice, received goods and services, supplier has paid the taxes, only mistake B2B as a B2C, GST number not correctly mentioned, interstate shown as a intrastate. So 2A only facilitation. Hope I am clear to all of you. Am I clear to all of you? So up to 1st January 2022, 5th condition which came, and as per 5th condition, your credit must match with GSTR 2B. GSTR 2B. Am I clear to all of you? Am I clear to all of you? Pakka? Shall I lock it? बोल दीजिए लॉक कर देना. अदरवाइज दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट हैज गिवन जजमेंट. अमिताभ बच्चन की तरह ऐसा नहीं बोल सकता मैं. हाँ, इट इज रीसेंट जजमेंट. हाँ. So this part is over. 2B must match, but again to come forward, way forward January 1, 2022. मेरा क्रेडिट 2B से मैच? तो आप सारा आंसर दीजिए. Supplier made the mistake. B2B, he has shown as a B2C. क्या करूं? छोटा बिजनेसमैन, स्मॉल टैक्स पेयर, नॉट हैविंग चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट. और चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट भी कहाँ रिटर्न भरता है? वो तो आर्टिकल भरते हैं. हाँ. और चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट से ये पूछता है रिटर्न गया क्या? उसका रिटर्न गया क्या? अगर उसने बोला रिटर्न गया, चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट हाँ, गुड जॉब डन, गुड जॉब. अब क्या किया अंदर में? रिटर्न गया. Am I right? हम सबका प्रैक्टिस एक जैसा है. रिटर्न जाना चाहिए और क्लाइंट को भी मतलब नहीं, विमल जी आपको रिटर्न भरने का काम दिया था ना, रिटर्न गया क्या? सबको रिटर्न जाने से मतलब है क्या गया उसमें कर लेते हैं. आप सब तो हम सब आर्टिकल पे छोड़ देते हैं ना. यू डू एवरीथिंग यू डू. और वो भी क्या करता है मालूम है? बोले कैसे भी जा, रिटर्न जा. कैसे भी जा, रिटर्न जा. क्या जाना है? कुछ नहीं देखने का. अब मैं पूछता हूं 1 जनवरी 2022, B2B सोन एज ए B2C, 2B में आएगा? नहीं, नहीं आएगा. My B2B तो मैंने बता दिया आपको, जीएसटी नंबर गलत डाल दिया आपका, आर्टिकल है ना, 2B में आएगा, इंट्रा दिखा दिया, आएगा, इनएलिजिबल, कैन यू अवेल क्रेडिट नाउ? से यस और नो? पक्का? एनीवन सेइंग यस? उफ, 1%, 2% from the back. Sir, from 1st January 2022, no choice. It has to match with GSTR 2B. It has to be. There are certain disclaimer, even though it is coming in 2B, credit is not available. Or it is not coming in 2B, but still credit is available. I will discuss those components, but theme line would be, it must be matching with GSTR. So you all are dependent on supplier. And your supplier need to be tax compliant supplier, otherwise gaya. Bilkul gaya. So let's discuss this part. Disclaimer part करते हैं, फिर interesting Jharkhand High Court and Telangana High Court. GSTR1 amendment. I will do it. First, disclaimer part. Credit coming in 2B. Okay, before I go to this point, I am sure a lot of us are filing GST return for the client. Am I right? Am I right? कितना on an average fees मिलता है? क्या हुआ? कुछ दिक्कत हुआ क्या? कोई प्रॉब्लम हुआ? पैन इंडिया सेम सिचुएशन. आप इधर मत सोचिए पुणे में आप हंस रहे हैं. आप इंडिया में किधर भी जाइए, अगर ये फीस पूछ लिया ना, और क्लाइंट भी होशियार, आप करते क्या है? व्हाट आर यू डूइंग? सारा डेटा तो मैंने बना के दिया, आपको तो रिटर्न ही भरना है ना. एम आई राइट? तो कोई अब मैं तो पूरा पैन इंडिया देखा है कि वी आर नॉट गिविंग क्वालिटी एंड कंटेंट. दैट्स द रीजन वी रिमेन विथ अग्रवाल समोसा. आई एम टेलिंग यू ऑनेस्ट फैक्ट. ऑनेस्ट फैक्ट. If we have to be Haldiram samosa, we have to bring content. Then only you will get the fees. Sometimes we have to start saying no. नहीं करूँगा काम. मेरे को इतना फीस मांगता. विमल जी इतना फीस? सर आप करवा के देखो, तब आपको मालूम पड़ेगा कि मैं क्या देने वाला हूँ आपको. Otherwise you will not come to know. एक बिल्डिंग में अगर 3 चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट हैं, you must know we are cutting our own hands and legs. अगर 3rd फ्लोर वाला चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट मैं हूं और मेरा क्लाइंट है, मैं 5,000 रुपया चार्ज करता हूं, फॉर श्योर 2nd फ्लोर वाला 2,000 कोट कर देगा ना. 1st फ्लोर वाला 1,000 रुपीज. एंड ग्राउंड फ्लोर जो अभी पास हुआ, वो बोलेगा सर फ्री में अगले साल से. एम आई राइट? ऐसे करेगा ना. It is not a good practice for us. But I ask this question from 2B perspective. It is only 2B? Sir, for return filing I need to check. Even though credit coming in 2B, but still I can't take credit. Is it only mathematical equation plus minus? No way. No way. Tell me one example. 2B में आ रहा है, फिर भी credit नहीं मिलेगा आपको. So many. दिल्ली से माल सप्लाई किया 30th October, you received on 5th of November. नहीं मिलेगा. Because goods are not being received in the month of October. Credit not coming in 2B, but still credit is available. Next example. RCM, import of goods, आइस गेट से ट्रांसमिट ही नहीं हुआ, 2B में नहीं आ रहा, बट फिर भी क्रेडिट 100% मिलेगा. तो वो मैथमेटिक्स 5,000, 2,000, 1,000 से हो जाएगा. वी हैव टू कन्विंस द क्लाइंट्स, बॉस जागो, आप कहां पे हैं? आने वाला टाइम इज नाउ ओपनिंग अप पंडोराज बॉक्स फॉर ऑल ऑफ अस टुगेदर. सो दिस इज 2B इज अ मस्ट. एम आई राइट मैम? मेरे साथ, मैम विथ मी, पक्का? यू आर डिस्कसिंग समथिंग, कुछ हो गया ना ऐसा वाला? मैम ऐसे ही होता है, जब हम सुनते हैं ना तो लगता है यार वो वाला ऐसा ही हुआ था. फिर लगता है ये इसको मालूम कैसे पड़ गया। देखिए मुझे से आगे भी मालूम है, प्रोवाइडेड यू पे फीस परसेंटेज, हाँ तभी तो, अदरवाइज कैसे होगा। देखिए एक चीज मैं आपको बताऊं, I really respect everyone, those who are coming and giving PowerPoint presentation. I'm not downgrading them. But मुझे अभी क्या लगता है, 5 साल हो गया अभी भी ना PPT मोड पे हम लोग आ नहीं सके. Because that goes one-sided with lot of technical provision. Somewhat we are practically missing connectivity. Unless this connectivity comes in, आपको समझ में ही नहीं आएगा हुआ क्या. So connectivity is more important. So whenever you come for the national conference, don't come with your questions first, पहले से सोचा हुआ, और फिर 5 स्पीकर से पूछने वाला, और फिर जजमेंट भी खुद ही दे देना जिसने मेरे हिसाब से आंसर दिया वो बेस्ट स्पीकर, विथ ओपन माइंड. एंड दैट्स द रीजन आई ऑलवेज से आप आंसर दीजिए, बीच में नहीं बैठने का, या हाँ या ना. So I was on 2B part, so 2B is important, you're dependent on me. But now discuss some of the important aspect to Jharkhand High Court judgment and Telangana High Court judgment. अब मैंने तो गलती कर दिया, B2B, B2C दिखा दिया, आपका GST नंबर नहीं डाला, आप भी बोला बिमल पैसा नहीं दूंगा GST का पैसा नहीं दूंगा, क्योंकि मेरे 2A में नहीं आ रहा, और मेरे 2A में नहीं आ रहा, मुझे क्रेडिट मिलेगा नहीं, तो मैं नहीं दूंगा, तो अपना GSTR1 अमेंड करो, अपना GSTR1 amend karo. So there was one transaction, January 2019, I raised the invoice, which I furnished in March 2019, wrongly furnished. पहले आपने क्रेडिट ले लिया, फिर देखा कि वो क्रेडिट तो आपका 2A में आ नहीं रहा, आपने रिवर्सल मार दिया. You are very tax compliant company, you reverse the amount. Then you came up to me, बिमल ये नहीं आ रहा, और ये पैसा नहीं मिलेगा आपको. And there's a problem pan India pertaining to this transaction. Lot of company has denied the payment to the supplier on the pretext it is not coming in GSTR 2A. 2B came only from beginning August 2020 and made effective from 1st January 2022. Am I clear to all of you? So of this petitioner, what he would be doing, he has gone and filed a writ petition before Jharkhand High Court, Mahalakshmi Infra Contract Private Limited. And he pleaded before the court, my lord, I did mistake, which I could not correct within the time period specified for amending GSTR1. So section 37 is permitting any omission and error can be rectified by September of next financial year, if it is related to any particular financial year, which is now changed to 30th November. Am I clear? उस टाइम पे क्या टाइम पीरियड था? टिल 30th सितंबर करना पड़ेगा मेरे को. तो 18-19 का ट्रांजैक्शन था, सितंबर 2019 में मुझे करेक्ट करना था. मैं तो जगह ही जून में हूं, जून 2021 में, जब आपने पैसा रोक लिया. अब मैं गया ऑफिसर के पास, ऑफिसर बोला देखो बिमल कुछ नहीं कर सकता मैं. वो एक बाबा बैठे हैं ना, GSTN बाबा, ना देख सकते हैं, ना सुन सकते हैं, ना बोल सकते हैं. अगर आप उसमें कर सकते हो तो अमेंड कर लो, और वो तो आपको मालूम है ना, नहीं किया, अमेंड नहीं हुआ, तो मैंने रिट पिटीशन फाइल किया झारखंड हाई कोर्ट, एंड आई प्लीडेड बिफोर द कोर्ट, एंड प्लीडिंग आई एम टेलिंग यू, in court the petitioner pleaded, my lord, there the ITC matching and mismatching provision within the GST law. What is ITC matching and mismatching? That automated GST return system. अगर मैंने 1 गलत भरा, अगर आपने 2A दे दिया होता तो इनको मालूम पड़ गया होता, ये उसको करेक्ट करते, जो मेरे 1A में आ जाता, मुझे मालूम पड़ जाता कि मैंने B2B को B2C दिखा दिया है, GST गलत डाल दिया है, इंटर को इंट्रा दिखा दिया है, मैं एक्सेप्ट कर लेता मिलॉट. वही ITC मैचिंग मिसमैचिंग, इट इज ऑटोमेटेड रिटर्न, इट वाज इनविसाइज्ड इन GST लॉ. सर इन लोगों ने इंप्लीमेंट ही नहीं किया, इनको इंप्लीमेंट करना था. एंड ऑनरेबल झारखंड हाई कोर्ट हैज टेकन ड्यू रिकॉग्निशन ऑफ द प्रोविजन And another point which was cited before the court, Milord, now this 42, 43, 43A, ITC matching, mismatching, इन्हें सब बंद कर दिया. इन्हें कहा omitted, stands omitted, but stands omitted only from 1st October 2022. And that too prospective, not the retrospective. तो उन्होंने बोला मिलॉर्ड अगर प्रायर टू 1 अक्टूबर 2022 का केस है तो मुझे पुराने प्रोविजन में ये बेनिफिट मैं कर सकता था अगर आपने मुझे बेनिफिट दिया होता. आपने नहीं दिया. मिलॉर्ड, इट इज नॉट माय फॉल्ट. एंड थर्ड आर्गुमेंट वाज इट्स न्यूट्रल. आई पेड द टैक्सेस टू द गवर्नमेंट and buyer has taken initially credit and then reversed the credit. So revenue neutral transaction मुझे allow कीजिए GSTR1 amend करने के लिए. Honorable Jharkhand High Court has given okay. आप जाइए GSTR1 manually submit कीजिए, ask the department to take it and amend it. Same issue came up to Telangana High Court, Yokohama India Limited. Telangana High Court relying on Bharti Airtel judgment. And on the pretext, if they are being allowed to amend GSTR1 of past period, it will unsettle the settlement between center and state. So beyond due date, if they are allowed, this problem will come up. So you are not allowed. You can't amend your GSTR1. Now I'm asking, I'm taking your vote. What do you think? Jharkhand High Court was right? Or Telangana High Court was right? So let's have voting so that I can understand my audience. How many of you believe Jharkhand High Court is right? And how many of you believe Telangana High Court? No, they are also democracy mein sab chalega. Sir, why you believe Telangana High Court is right? Can we have mic please here? I need someone to pick. Rajesh bhai, good morning. मैंने आपकी तारीफ आपके एब्सेंस में कर दी थी. और नहीं कर दी थी मैंने, की है, देखिए मैंने की है ना. देखिए राजेश भाई पूना से पुराना नाता है. ये लोग कई बार चाहते हैं मुझे यहाँ नहीं बुलाना. अभी मैं कुछ बोल रहा था ना तो मैडम को समझ में आ गया आंसर. मतलब मैडम आप तो 10% फीस मुझे देना है. नॉट एन इश्यू. यस, माइक दीजिए भैया यहाँ पे. यू टेक माइक, वी विल एंजॉय सर. आई एम गिविंग यू द माइक. हाँ माइक दो. Yes, please. Okay, please, sir. I hope you are loving this kind of interaction both way, two-way communication. Yes, sir.
Sir, time period is specified for the amendment. So, irrespective of 1A or not, a time period was there and that facility was there.
Perfect. Shall I answer you?
Yes.
37 talks about time limit. But can you read 37 in isolation without reading 42, 43 and corresponding rules? You're saying amend by due date, no problem. But this amendment has got repercussion of 42 and 43 ITC matching and mismatching.
Yeah, but the basic filing is your responsibility. That is not stopping you. Someone is saying you are made mistake, then that mistake is not stopping you, no?
Then answer to you, none is stopping me, but that's how the automated GST return system envisages. And we have to read the law in a holistic manner. I can't read only one section for my convenience, which is department's view. I will always say, my lord, there are other sections which is related and connected directly, indirectly with 37. Are they not supposed to get me 2A? Are they not supposed to get me 1A? Can it be independent of? Now I am going to tell you, now you are having, I said na 2B ab aapka hai, ab aapke paas choice. From 1st January 20, kyun bola? Because law is like that. Law is like that. But prior to 1st January 2022, you can't argue कि 2A से match करना चाहिए. Hope with my record.
No, sir, not for 2A matching. I am saying for,
Even for this.
For amendment.
Even for amendment, I am telling you. Sir, just because center and state has done the settlement part, by this amending their settlement get unsettled, you will leave all other sections. I'm also genuine, honest taxpayer. I've got my own grievances. Post 1st January 2022, I'm going to tell you now. Be seated. In my considered view, and this matter will go definitely to the Supreme Court. Even Bharti Airtel judgment required, it cannot be used as a ratio decidendi. It can be obiter dicta. Just to pick up one judgment and then say everything, no, it is not correct. And just because it unsettled the subtle part of center and state, my own right can't go away, and you can't read only one section independent, leaving other interconnected sections. Just to give a flavor of it, let me tell you, even today you will ask this question to me, Bimalji, if I allow you open it, then you will continue to make mistake. So I don't want you to continue to make mistake. I want to put some full stop somewhere. There may be a case in the past that supplier has not filed GST R1. File 3B, right? So it was not coming in 2A and 2B. There may be a case supplier has filed one for 10 lakh rupees, pass on the credit to you, but actually he has paid 1 lakh rupees as a liability. He was making excess furnishing in GST R1 only to help buyer to get the credit. कर रहा था ना? And you were having challenge. Being genuine and honest taxpayer, you are having challenge. इस बिमल को समझाएं तो समझाएं कैसे? Am I right? Now from provision onward, sequential filing of GST return system. अब ये सारा चीज खत्म होने वाला है. Down the line, 6 months to 12 months, you will find all this going to be vanished. Rule 59, sub-rule 6. And this rule says from 1st January 2022, Bimal, अगर आपने पुराना month का 3B नहीं भरा ना, so we are in the month of November. अगर October का 3B नहीं भरा ना, आप November का 1 नहीं भर सकते. ये ऐसा क्यों किया? ये उस सप्लायर को ठीक करने के लिए किया कि पहले तू टैक्स पे कर. तू कई बार टैक्स पे नहीं करता था ना, पहले टैक्स पे कर. अब तू 1 भरेगा तब तेरी क्रेडिट पास ऑन होगी. 59(6). Second problem, there were certain supplier. Okay, let's take this example in a very lighter mode and then serious mode. Sometime I'm filing my GST R1. When I'm filing my GST R1, and mistake is quite obvious, to error is human, all right? When I'm filing 1 lakh का मेरा liability है, मैं GST R1 भर रहा हूँ, और आपको तो मालूम है दिन में तो GST रिटर्न नहीं जाता, रात को जाता है, वो भी आर्टिकल भर रहा होता है. मैं तो घर चला जाता हूँ, खाना खाते हुए पूछता हूँ गया कि नहीं गया. वो 1 लाख का लाइबिलिटी था, 1 जीरो ज्यादा लग गया. वो सबमिट बटन दबा रहा था, उसको समझ में आया कि गया नहीं यार, एक और जीरो मार. वो 1 लाख का 10 लाख होके गया, 1 लाख का 10 लाख होके गया. So it was liability of 1 lakh rupees only, wrongly furnished as a 10 lakh rupees. Are you supposed to pay 10 lakh? Say yes and no. Both the ground. There may be some suppliers, crude supplier, जानबूझ के 1 लाख का 10 लाख करते थे to pass on the credit. Wrong version. Department wanted to protect from such suppliers. They say ये लोग चोर हैं. They are only passing on excess credit, right? Here the genuine taxpayer, sir, गलती से हो गया. To error is human. मुझे 10 लाख नहीं देना, मुझे 1 लाख ही देना है. वो जीरो ज्यादा लग गया. आपने मुझे रिवीजन का भी ऑप्शन नहीं दिया, तो मैं करेक्ट नहीं कर सकता. मैं करेक्ट कर लेता, 3B भरने से पहले करेक्ट कर लेता, प्रोवाइडेड आप मुझे रिवीजन का ऑप्शन नहीं दिया. अब आप नेक्स्ट मंथ में ही करेंगे अमेंड. 3B कितना से पे करेंगे, 1 लाख से 10 लाख से? कोई 10 लाख वाला? क्या मालूम गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से कोई बैठा हो यहाँ पे. हाँ, सो वो 1 लाख ही भरेगा। तो ये लोग क्या बोलते हैं मालूम है, 75 सबसेक्शन 12 एक्सप्लेनेशन from 1st January 2022. What they are saying, Bimal, this difference of 9 lakh would be self-assessment tax. And this we can recover from you without issuance of so-cause notice. यानी so-cause notice भी मेरा बैंक अकाउंट फ्रीज कर देंगे and they will collect 9 lakh rupees. It is not a stupid, complete stupid. If I look at department side, अच्छा, सही किया। इस बंदे को रोकना पड़ेगा मुझे जो 1 लाख का 10 लाख दिखाता है, but you have to give some time to him, maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months to amend his GSTR1. How you can say it is self-assessment tax can be recovered without issuance of so-called notice? It is just not acceptable. I met with the officer. I said, sir, क्या करते हैं आप? ऐसे provision बनाएंगे तो हो गया। सर, बिमल तुम समझते नहीं हो। There are so many screwed guy in the taxpayer. Screwed कितने लोग होते हैं? थोड़े बहुत। Last 2 years data, 55,000 crore rupees tax evasion, officially on public domain. 55,000 last 2 years. On an average, we are collecting 1.5 lakh crore rupees per month. Hardly 2% are screwed guy. उस 2% के लिए आपने सबका जीना दुश्वार कर दिया है। सबके यहां सर्च, सबके यहां इन्वेस्टिगेशन, इसका क्लासिफिकेशन का इश्यू है, चलो इसकिया। अब इलेक्शन आने वाला है, हो सकता है 1 साल बंद हो जाएगा। नहीं, आपको याद है 2019 जब इलेक्शन आ रहा था ना, तब तक कोई टूए वुए का कुछ नहीं था, कुछ नहीं। सी अभी कोई बीजेपी वाला भी मुझे कोई टोकेगा नहीं। We are not BJP, not Shiv Sena, not NCP, not Congress. We are a genuine, honest taxpayer and tax professional. We are looking each of business. ऐसे नहीं हो सकता ना, अब आप पावर में आ गए तो लगाओ बत्ती सबके, हाँ? ऐसे नहीं होगा ना। We have to be very careful. See, 55,000 crore rupees last 2 year data. अरे have to have something decent. I spoke to the officer. मैंने कहा सर क्या करते हैं आप? बोले नहीं बेमल, उनके लिए हमने एक क्लैरिफिकेशन इशू कर दिया है कि हम परेशान। मतलब वो नीचे वाले को नहीं मालूम पड़ता सर, आप उससे जाके मिलिए, उसको तो लाल हरा ही समझ में आता है। उसको प्रोविजन और ज्यादा प्रोविजन पढ़ा दिया ना तो वहीं से बाहर भगाता है वो। बोले ज्यादा पढ़ा लिखा है तुम, है जा चल चल, तेरे को फ्रीज करते हैं, बाद में देखेंगे तेरे को, ठीक है। तो मैंने बोला सर ये तो नहीं है, आपको कुछ तो 2 महीने 6 महीने टाइम देना चाहिए। बोले नहीं नहीं बिमल कोई रिकवरी नहीं करेगा। मैं सर वो वैसे भी नहीं कर सकता, ही कांट डू दैट विद इन द लॉ। उन्होंने पूछा कैसे? मैंने कहा सर देयर द प्रोविजन अंडर सेक्शन 37, एनी रेक्टिफिकेशन ऑफ एनी ओमिशन एंड एरर कैन बी डन by September in next financial year following the end of financial year. So can you read 7512 in isolation? I was making this point to you. 37 is not relevant. This point I was making to you, can you read only 37 for discussing due date? You will not read 42, 43, 43A. अब आपको ये वाली बात समझाई तो ये वाली बात समझ में आ गई। Law need to be read in a context of holistic manner. If 37 is also connected with my GSTR1 and GSTR3B, then 7512 explanation cannot be read in isolation. Hope I'm clear. तो ये दूसरा प्रोविजन, अब ये क्या इंप्रूव करेगा? अगर कोई बेईमानी करके 1 लाख का 10 लाख करता है, एक बार कर ले, दूसरी बार कर ले, तीसरी बार, he become habitual offender. And this provision will protect not only you, even to the tax department. Am I clear? एक बार गलती, to error is human acceptable. दूसरी गलती मान लिया, तीसरी, चौथी, पांचवी, छठी मीन्स आप जानबूझ के ड्रामा, और हम सब ने किया है। हमारे बीच में ऐसे लोग थे जिनने एक्सेस क्रेडिट पास ऑन करने के लिए 1 10 लाख का भरा और 3 भी 1 लाख दिया है। सर हैं हम लोग के बीच, हैं हम लोगों के बीच, ये उनके लिए प्रोविजन था। कमिंग टू द थर्ड प्रोविजन, नाउ let me ask, you have not filed your GSTR1 for the past period. You have not filed. Can you file your GSTR1 for the current November? हाँ या ना? Anyone हाँ वाला? नहीं. For the benefit of, when I'm not filing one, it is not going to your 2A or 2B. Now it's a compulsion on me. I need to file my one for the preceding period, then only I can file current period. So that your credit must be reflected in your 2A or 2B. Fourth provision, November month, I did not file GSTR1. Can I file GSTR3B? Yes and no? It can't be possible from 1st October 2022. Pehle 1 bharo, 3B gets enabled. So that this seamless flow of credit, but you're dependent on supplier. So this problem which we were facing in the past will go away in time to come, 6 months to 12 months time period. Hope I'm clear to all of you. Am I clear to all of you? Pakka? For sure? Okay. So having said this part, coming to the next part, connecting part. देखिए GST में there are two big pillars. One is supply, one is ITC. Am I right? ITC, when we started with the tagline seamless flow of credit. Am I right? Seamless. ऐसे ही बोला था ना? Seamless मिल रहा है सर हम लोगों को? सर हाँ ना? इतना सीरियस कैसे हो गए आप लोग? मिल रहा है? सर अभी तो क्रेडिट लेने वाला मतलब सिचुएशन ऐसा है, हैव यू सीन सांप सीढ़ी वाला खेल? हाँ, इधर से निकले तो इधर से बच, इधर से निकले तो इधर से बच, इधर से निकले तो 100 के पास तक जाते जाते तो कई बार लगता है भैया क्रेडिट दो ही मत, खत्म करो झंझट, क्रेडिट दो मत, झंझट खत्म. Now they are bringing so much of stringent provision in ITC which I did not understand. It is easing the business at all. It is not easing the business. They have introduced the 6th condition. And they are saying, Bimal, there is 2B में जो आया है ना, there 2B में, और आपको याद रखना पड़ेगा वो 5,000, 2,000, 1,000 और फ्री वाला. हाँ, keeping that in mind. वो बोलते हैं 6th condition जो 2B में आया ना वो restricted नहीं होना चाहिए, restricted नहीं होना चाहिए 38 में जाके. अब 38 में जाइए, वो आर्टिकल को क्या मालूम 38 क्या है, और हम भी उसको कितना बताते हैं, हम भी उसको जैसे बोला ना रिटर्न भरना है, ये सप्लाई है, ये आईटीसी ले, खत्म कर, आगे बढ़ा. ऐसा ही है ना पैन इंडिया. और वो 5,000 का 10,000 कभी हम मांगने से नहीं, हमको डर लगता है कि 5,000 का 10,000 बोलो तो अभी बगल वाले के पास. सर कब तक we have to have our own legs and hands, saying that इतना ही चाहिए मेरे को तभी करूंगा मैं काम. And what are the 6 restriction restricted? अब वो सुन लीजिए, सुनने के बाद आपका दिमाग एकदम फ्रेश हो जाएगा. आज आपको समझ में आ जाएगा जीएसटी कितना गुड एंड सिंपल टैक्स है. हाँ आने वाला है. अब वो क्या बोलते हैं, 2B में आ गया फिर भी आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. पहला रेस्ट्रिक्शन, आपके सप्लायर ने अगर नया रजिस्ट्रेशन लिया है, नया फॉर सम पीरियड दे विल से कि अगर इस सप्लायर से आपने माल लिया है तो 2B में आएगा लेकिन आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. पहला रिस्ट्रिक्शन. एंड व्हाई दिस प्रोविजन? गवर्नमेंट को अचानक ऐसा सपना कैसे, क्यों, व्हाई दे आर गेटिंग सच काइंड ऑफ ड्रीम? यार सप्लायर ने नया रजिस्ट्रेशन लिया, उसके लिए स्पेसिफाइड पीरियड, और मेरा क्रेडिट डिनाई कर देना. गवर्नमेंट बोलते बिमल कुछ ना, रिस्क प्रोन सप्लायर है, they only take registration to pass on the credit. तो हम आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे. अगर हमको लगेगा बिमल अगर उस कैटेगरी का सप्लायर है तो अगर आपने उससे माल लिया है तो फॉर स्पेसिफाइड पीरियड आपके 2B में आ रहा होगा, बट मैं आपको क्रेडिट नहीं दूंगा. फर्स्ट रेस्ट्रिक्शन. सेकंड रेस्ट्रिक्शन, योर सप्लायर इज डिफॉल्टर इन पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्स. डिफॉल्टर इन payment of tax. And he continues to default in payment of tax for specified period. So आपका supplier defaulter है, defaulter को पकड़ो ना यार, defaulter को नहीं, अगर आपने उससे माल लिया for specified period, your credit would be restricted. Am I clear? Second restriction. Third restriction. अगर supplier का 1 और 3B में mismatch है, 75, 12, and that crosses specified limit, then that may be third restriction. But देखिए एक और issue, a provision applicable only from 1st October 2022. Am I right? हमारा एक लॉ है, एक है जीएसटीएन बाबा. आप लोगों में से कई लोगों को मालूम होगा जीएसटीएन में ऑलरेडी ये लोग दे हैव इंसर्टेड दिस फील्ड. इफ 1-3B मिसमैच, ए पर्टिकुलर पैरामीटर 10% से ज्यादा है, रेड कलर आना चालू हो जाता है. अरे लॉ तो अभी आया है रे, लॉ तो अभी आया ना, बट पोर्टल पे इंप्लीमेंट, जब बोलते हैं पोर्टल में पहले कुछ इंप्लीमेंट हो जाए, वो जो नहीं करने का वो पहले. ईज ऑफ बिजनेस, वर्ल्ड बैंक में रैंकिंग बढ़ा रहे हैं हम लोग. थर्ड कैटेगरी. फोर्थ कैटेगरी, 2B वर्सेस 3B mismatch, and that credit availed is excess of specified limit. सप्लायर का, आपका नहीं, सप्लायर का रेस्ट्रिक्शन फॉर यू, बट सप्लायर का प्रॉब्लम है, आपका क्रेडिट रिस्ट्रिक्ट कर देंगे. यानी सोचिए आपकी 5,000 की प्रैक्टिस कितनी स्मूथ होने वाली है. वो क्लाइंट को समझ में नहीं आता. कई बार तो हमको ही खुद समझ में नहीं आता कि मैं देखूं कैसे कि बिमल टैक्स कॉम्प्लायंट है भी या नहीं भी. फिफ्थ कंडीशन, आई हैव गॉट माई ओन ई क्रेडिट लेजर. मेरा राइट है ना यूज करने का, है नहीं है, हाँ या ना? ये बोलते नहीं पूरा यूज नहीं करने दूंगा. नहीं, तुझे 1% कंपल्सरीली कैश में देना पड़ेगा. उफ, समझ में नहीं आता. क्रेडिट में भी तो पैसा दिया ना, जमा हुआ ना तुम्हारे यहां. अब यहां भी बोलते हैं दे यू कांट यूज इन एक्सेस ऑफ 99%. एंड छठवां कंडीशन, इसको सुन के तो आपको इतना अच्छा लगेगा कि उन्होंने बोला ये तो पांचों हमको समझ में आ गए थे, अब कुछ अगर हमको समझ में नहीं आएगा तो हम नोटिफाई कर देंगे. गॉड, समटाइम मेरा भी दिमाग ना खराब हो जाता है. मुझे कई बार लगता है यार मैं जिसको लेक्चर देने जा रहा हूं कहीं वो लोग वहीं से चालू नहीं हो जाए. और इनको बुलाओ यहाँ पे कभी, इनको यहाँ जीएसटी डन दिस, वी हैव डन दिस, वी हैव डन दिस, वी हैव डन दिस. अरे यार तुम ग्राउंड लेवल पे आके देखो तुमने क्या किया है. आई ट्वीटेड वन बोट, मैंने इस पे ना एक माई ट्विटर, हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू आर ऑन विथ मी ऑन माई ट्विटर? और सो मेनी, गुड नंबर्स. लेकिन जो नहीं है वो कर सकते. नहीं, उनको लगता है कि मैं पैसे चार्ज करूंगा. ट्विटर तो ऐसा है ना कि अगर आपको गाली देने का भी मन हो ना दीजिए. वहां सोशल मीडिया से वर्स्ट प्लेटफॉर्म. लेट मी टेल यू एंड एक्नॉलेज, अब तो मैंने मन बना लिया है. ट्विटर ठीक है, अपना काम करते रहो, अपना प्रसाद देते रहो. डोंट लुक एट कि भक्त क्या बोल रहा है. सोशल मीडिया इज लाइक, आपने फेसबुक पे एक पोस्ट किया, एक लाइक देने में भी ऐसा लगता है कि इतना 1 करोड़ रुपया चला जाएगा. Am I right? We are so judgmental nowadays. We are just leaving the human touch. I was talking just while ago. जब मैं आया इधर में यही I was discussing that what is the importance of human touch in a professional. पहले we have to have human, then professional. And professional में भी वो 5, 2, 1 नहीं हो सकता and free नहीं हो सकता. We have to really create that credential within ourselves. Am I right? I made one voting, and voting में ये था कि जब आप क्रेडिट देना चाहते ही नहीं है तो क्रेडिट आप वापस ले लीजिए. Get reduce this GST rate 5, 12, 18, 28. इनको कम कर दीजिए एकदम. Make it minimum. खत्म कीजिए ना, नो आईटीसी का झंझट, इतना कौन देखेगा। 2000 से ज्यादा वोट आए थे राजेश भाई। 90% ऑडियंस सेज बंद करो, रेट को कम कर दो, दैट इज व्हाट द ऑडियंस सेड। तो आई एम ऑफ द फीलिंग आईटीसी तो इनने आईटीसी एकदम बेकार कर रखा है। अब मैं एक जो टॉपिक आपके सामने डिस्कस करने वाला हूं ना, वो आपने कहीं नहीं सुना, कहीं नहीं सुना फॉर श्योर। और आज आपको मालूम पड़ेगा, एंड यू पिक्ड अप द राइट पॉइंट, एक तरफ देखना और एक तरफ, सॉरी डोंट टेक मी पर्सनल, law cannot be read in isolation, it need to be read holistically relating with the provision. Somebody was telling me time limit to avail ITC. Some senior guy came when I was here and he was discussing, sir time limit का क्या होगा, पुराना वाला भी, पुराना वाला, वो अभी नया वाला बात नहीं कर रहे। We all know time limit provision is now 30th नवंबर। एनी डाउट टू एनीवन? नहीं है तो बोल दीजिए अभी भी, बिकॉज देन 30th November, am I right? Now in 30th November, it started from earliest of two date. First is due date of furnishing 3B of September, next financial year, following the end of financial year. So 21-22 जिसका GST 9 और 9C जाना है, am I right? 21-22 पुराना प्रोविजन अगर होता, so 20th October 2022, सी यस, पक्का ना? आवाज कम है, लंच है ना हमारा, है ना, लंच है, आवाज आएगा आपका। देखिए जब तक आप इंजॉय नहीं करेंगे तब तक मैं तो नहीं आगे बढ़ने वाला। मैं तो, मोदी जी आप सुनो मत सुनो, सुना के तो जाऊंगा। आप सुनो मत सुनो, सुना के तो जाऊंगा। आप फिर उसके बाद जो बोलना बोलते रहना, क्या फर्क पड़ता है। लेकिन सी माय ऑब्जेक्टिव इज जितना बोल के जाऊं उसमें मजा आना चाहिए। एंड नेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस व्हेन यू इनवाइटेड ऑल द वे, लेट मी टेल यू, मेरा कल रात का क्या, yesterday I was at some marriage ceremony. राजेश भाई ऑनेस्टली बोल रहा हूँ, बहुत डांट सुनी आज सुबह बिग बॉस से। हाँ हाँ, आपकी मुलाकात करवानी है। 2 बजे पे घर वापस आया, 2 o'clock yesterday at Delhi। 3:30 बजे जगा, 1.5 घंटा। 3:30 बजे जगना मतलब 6 बजे मेरी फ्लाइट थी दिल्ली टू पुणे। 3:30 पे जगा, 4:15 पे निकला, 5 बजे एयरपोर्ट। और एयरपोर्ट T3 से अगर आपने ट्रेवल किया हो तो आपको इंडिया अच्छा दिखेगा। सो बिग लाइन, सो क्यू, रिक्वेस्ट कर करके माई फ्लाइट 6 o'clock। सो व्हाट, सो व्हाट, 6 o'clock मैडम प्लीज करके पकड़ा और यहां आया आप लोग के पास। तो यहां आने का पर्पज क्या है मालूम है? नो लव एंड अफेक्शन, लव एंड अफेक्शन। वाइफ में से बोलती रही यार तुम 1-1.5 घंटा सोए हो। मैंने बोला यार चले जाने, संडे है, नेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस है, इतने लोग सुनने के लिए आएंगे। बोले यार फैमिली भी तो कुछ है। मैंने ये भी एक फैमिली है मेरी, आई नीड टू गो देयर। तो कई बार मैं आप लोग को पकड़ पकड़ के सुनाता हूँ ना, पकड़ पकड़ के सुनो मेरी बात। वो जब आप नहीं बोलते तो मन खराब हो जाता है, यार इतना मेहनत करके आए हो और आपकी आवाज ही नहीं निकल रही। आवाज तो निकालनी पड़ेगी। सर आई कैन टेल यू, बीइंग प्रोफेशनल यू हैव टू हैव पैशन। अगर पैशन नहीं है ना तो आगे नहीं बढ़ सकते। और छोटी मोटी प्रैक्टिस करनी है तो बंद कर। कई बार तो लगता है सीए बने ही क्यों थे। कई बार लगता है नहीं, पहले किसी ने बोल दिया होता। जब पढ़ते थे तब ऐसा लगता था कि बस पास हो जाऊं, इस बुक को ऊपर रख दूंगा, कभी नहीं छूऊंगा। मुझे क्या मालूम था कि जाते जाते तक पढ़ना पड़ेगा। नहीं मालूम था, मैडम नहीं मालूम था। मैडम गेव सो मच ऑफ एनर्जी टू मी। अब ये एनर्जी जब तक नहीं होगी वो पढ़ने का टेम्पटेशन नहीं जगेगा. सो दैट्स द रीजन आई ऑलवेज वांट यू शुड हैव टेम्पटेशन भीतर से कि हाँ यार समझना है. एक नया पॉइंट राजेश भाई दे रहा हूं, किसी ने नहीं बोला, मैंने बोल दिया, किसी ने आपसे नहीं बोला होगा जो आज आप सुनने वाले हैं. 16/4 वापस तैयार. वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट 21, 22. Earliest of due date. Due date of furnishing 3B, September, following the end of financial year, which was 28th October 2022. Or date of furnishing annual return, which is 31st December 2022, whichever is. Now this is increased to 30th. So अब सबको बड़ा खुशी हुआ कि डेट बढ़ गया यार. 20 अक्टूबर से अब ये 30th November है. Do you all agree 30th November is the correct proposition? नहीं? Who is saying no? अच्छा वोटिंग करते हैं. 30th November is the correct proposition. Raise your hand. और कितने बोलते हैं नहीं? ओ बाबा, माल बिक चुका है यहाँ पे. नहीं सर, अभी ये ना सर for you. How come this 16 subsection 4 can be read independent? When 37 is saying any rectification of omission and error by 30th November. 39 is saying any rectification of omission and error by 30th November. And even credit note can be issued till 30th. For me, it is not correct. For the reason, I'm a supplier. I'm filing my October GSTR1. कब फाइल करना है? If I'm a monthly filer, it is by 11th of. If I'm less than 5 crore, then 13th of November. Am I right? And which gets auto-populated in your GSTR to be on 14th of November. Clear? Now if I'm filing my GSTR1 on 12th of November, not on 11th of November, आपके 2B में ऑटो पॉपुलेट होगा? नहीं होगा ना? आपको क्रेडिट मिलेगा? Sir, 2B is the condition now. 2B is the condition now. Whereas they are saying, Bimal, you can take credit till 30th November, लेकिन वो आपके 2B में होगा ही नहीं, तो आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा सर. राजेश भाई, नहीं मिलेगा. So supplier must file GSTR1 by 11th of. So आपके लिए डेट तो अब 11th of November ही हो गया. आप कुछ भी करते रहिए, सप्लायर ने अगर 11th तक नहीं भरा तो आपके 2B में नहीं आएगा. So अब तो ये तो टाइम गया. अब तो जिसने 11th तक नहीं भरा, 12 को भरा, 13 को भरा, वो आपके 2B में. 2B is a condition for availing credit. So can we read any provision independent? No, when it is connected, we need to read in holistic manner. Hope I'm clear to all of you. So this time limit again an IWAS. अब इसमें एक और इशू आया टाइम लिमिट के अंदर. अक्टूबर का तो आप भरेंगे 11th of November. Am I right? आप 3B में क्रेडिट लेते हैं by 28th November. नवंबर का रिटर्न, नवंबर का 3B is due on 20th December. Am I right? So this question is again popping up. It is only for the October 3B or it is for November 3B also? November नहीं मिलेगा. Two school. One school is saying credit be availed through GSTR 3B. Am I right? Sir, my request. Sir, मेरे साथ आधी घंटा रह गया. आधी घंटा बाद you free and then you can pick up your mobile. Flight mode है ना. Sir, just to have connectivity. So November return is due on 20th December 3B, but question is 30th November is a sacrosanct date. So in all probability, it is only October 3B which we are referring to, not the November one. Am I clear? Now let's discuss the past period. Past period, 17-18, 18-19, 19-20, time period gone. You have not availed within the time limit. And you may have got notices from the department that it is beyond the due date. How many of you believe that that credit would be available for the past period? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And how many of you say no? पहले क्वेश्चन समझ में आया नहीं आया? आया? For the past period time limit. My answer to all of you. My answer to all of you. And this would be your answer when you are replying such scrutiny notices. Are you all ready? My first answer. See, GST credit is a vested right. Do you believe or not? It's my vested right. As per Article 300 capital A. For availing vested right, there are divergent judgment. Some Supreme Court judgment says, Bimal, it cannot be open-ended. It cannot go in perpetuity. You have to avail within the time limit. And some judgment says, no, it should be available, transitional credit. Straightforward case. What was the case in transitional credit? Brand equity judgment, Delhi High Court judgment. Are you recalling? उस judgment में क्या हुआ था मालूम है? I will give you Bombay High Court judgment also, and I will take you Punjab and Haryana High Court, then I will take you Philco Trade Center Private Limited, because I am discussing credit component. Transitional credit last date was 27 December 2017. 17, am I right? We all know system glitches was there. Don't you think this system glitches was there when we were discussing time limit to avail credit? Say yes and no. Initially बहुत problem था sir. 17-18 याद कीजिए ना आप लोग. बहुत dispute था. समझ में नहीं आता था कि कब लेना है, कब क्या होगा, नहीं होगा, due date क्या हो. We have operational inconvenience. Am I right? 18-19. We are discussing all past period only. I'm not saying way forward. Way forward, sacrosanct 30th November. 30th November. But I'm discussing 17-18, 18-19, 19-20, lot of hassle. Was it not there? It was there. What happened? They formed IT grievance cell committee. IT grievance cell committee. Just assume a situation, 3B आपको फाइल करना था, आप क्रेडिट नहीं ले पाए, आपने नील भर दिया. Mistake. By due date, 20th October जो होता था, आपने नील भर दिया, नहीं लिया क्रेडिट. अब आपको वो क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. या जब आप 3B भरना चाह रहे थे, उस दिन सिस्टम ग्लिचेज, you could not submit your 3B. It was late filed. Please tell me, क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा. I'm just creating a perimeteria with transitional credit. Hope you all are getting same page पे है ना? What happened in Punjab and Haryana High Court judgment, Edford Technologies India Private Limited, Honorable Punjab and Haryana High Court said, and which was upheld by Honorable Supreme Court also, it's a vested right, transitional credit. It can't be denied, and time period cannot be, create as a bottleneck. And what they did, जब time period का बात आया ना, तो they have done retrospective amendment. Earlier within the provision, it was in such manner as may be prescribed, and later on they have introduced in such time and in such manner as may be prescribed, and such time got inserted with retrospective date. यार आप देना चाहते नहीं हो. You are only bringing bottleneck before me. You are making sure Bimal को credit नहीं मिलना चाहिए. Edford Technology allowed, Honorable Supreme Court has upheld that judgment. Then it matter came to brand equity. They read rule 117. So they say rule is only procedural. It cannot take away my substantive right, but it cannot go in perpetuity. So they have allowed 3 years limitation period till 30th June 2020, brand equity. And that time Honorable Delhi High Court has said, kindly publicize to among all taxpayers कि करो भैया, आप अपना भरो, आपको मिलेगा. Bombay High Court took another judge, Nalco Limited, another view. बिमल, तुमने तो 27 दिसंबर में ट्राई नहीं किया था ट्रांजिशनल क्रेडिट लेने के लिए. So what Bombay High Court had taken cognizance, did you try on GST common portal for filing? Tran 1. They got it out that lock sheet लेके आओ. देखते हैं बिमल ने ट्राई किया था कि नहीं किया था. अच्छा, बिमल ने ट्राई नहीं किया तो उसको बेनिफिट नहीं मिलेगा. Nalco Limited, Bombay High Court. Honorable Supreme Court, all pile up, all matter has gone. Philco Trade Center, they have opened up, big relief measure for all of us together. But within this relief measure, again circular. इसको मिलेगा, इसको नहीं मिलेगा. अब आप वो अगर आपको याद हो तो they have created for non-collection of C form, F form, I form till 27 December pertaining that to credit. अगर आपको 27 December 2017 के बाद मिला है तो नहीं मिलेगा आपको. Circular is saying, but Philco Trade Center is not saying so. Your matter is subjective, adjudication, so-called notice, appeal it, आप benefit नहीं ले सकते. I do not understand. These are all. So in that context, we have to discuss section 16, subsection 4. Few of the guys says credit is available. Let me start argument number 1. It's my vested right, I say it, right? Of course, I do agree it cannot go in perpetuity. It has to have certain time limitation, no denial to it. But time limitation need to be read with the operational window available to all of us together. Even GSTN was evolving. इनका 3B जब नहीं चलता ना, डेट कभी कभी देखा होगा आपने, इनका नहीं चलता तो what they do, 2 दिन के लिए बढ़ा दिया, 4 दिन के लिए बढ़ा दिया. See, this is the problem we have also faced. We are the party for the nation growth and development. हमें ये विंडो क्यों नहीं मिलेगा? So first, vested right. Second, section 16 subsection 2 and section 16 subsection 4. Section 16 subsection 2 is having 4 conditions, right? But start with the non-obstantly clause. Notwithstanding anything contained in this section, including subsection 4. So overriding everything. If a registered person has satisfied these conditions, he will avail credit. So these conditions, having invoice, received goods and services, supplier must have paid taxes, and regularly filing GST return. So to me, one of the interpretation coming out, it is overriding section 16, subsection 4. Am I clear to all? Clear to all. It is maybe both way, but that is what one of the interpretation can be done. Third argument to this is, third argument. See, when we look at the law from a whole perspective, whole angle, for 1718, 1819, and for discussing this, I want to take you to a different direction altogether. See, थोड़ा सा मैं इधर से हटके थोड़ा इधर आता हूँ. So just think on new concept now. As a supplier, I have raised the invoice for 10 lakh rupees. I have charged IGST. You have paid the amount to me. I have not deposited with the government exchequer. Same problem whether credit available or not. Am I right? Am I right? For the past period, for the, what is your take? Credit would be available or not available? Say yes and no. कितने लोग बोलते हैं available? Honestly है, और बीच में ये नहीं चाहिए मुझे. How many say पूरा हाथ available? And how many of you say नहीं मिलेगा? कुछ अभी भी ऐसे ही है. देखिए एक चीज बोलूं मैं आपको, फिर से बोलता हूं. You have to participate. Then only you will learn. And let me discuss this part. आज आपको एक और नया चीज देखने को मिलेगा. Interpretation how to be read. It's your supplier who even after collecting is not depositing. Am I right? Who should be penalized? Why they are denying credit to the buyer? First point, right? So let me go to the legal jurisprudence. In pre-GST era, in Central Excise, there was one judgment, KK Industries Limited. Same issue. Non-payment by the supplier can be made ground for denial of credit. Honorable Supreme Court has said no credit can't be denied. Under VAT regime, all the High Court has given judgment in our favor only, except Bombay High Court, Mahakot and Lakshmi, right? All judgment in my favor. Come to the GST scenario now. In GST, there is one judgment, D.Y. Bethel Enterprises. You can always read the law. Law is saying supplier has not paid the taxes, credit is not available. Am I right? Am I right? In D.Y. Bethel, the argument which was taken by the petitioner H. Millot, department has given registration to both of us, to supplier and to the recipient. They are demanding reversal from the recipient along with interest for non-payment of taxes by the supplier. So petitioner said, Millot, when registration is being given to both of us by the same department, why can't they first initiate action against the defaulting supplier? Are you getting my point? Before coming to my door. And another argument which I am adding to the flavor, if you look at the GST law, my whole of the liability are supplier driven. Section 9 chargeable section, unless it is a RCM liability on supplier. Go to the valuation, go to the ITC, go to the 73, go to the 74, go to any provision, it is supplier driven. How you can demand reversal from the recipient? Unless you satisfy a condition that you have taken all action against the defaulting supplier and he is not paying to you. अरे पकड़ो ना उसको अगर वो available है तो. अभी I will come to that last part में आऊँगा. Supplier को बोलते तू free, तू जा. हाँ तू जा, हम इससे ले लेंगे. I will come to that point. Let me finish this part. So Honorable Madras High Court, Madurai bench has said, unless investigation is initiated against the defaulting supplier, you can't demand a reversal, recovery from the buyer, and that too along with interest. There is one doctrine, next argument, doctrine of impossibility. Lax non cogit ad impossibilia. What is the argument, you know? Being buyer, being recipient, he was saying to the court, Millot, I paid the amount to the supplier. मैंने supplier को पैसा दे दिया. सर मेरे साथ पक्का ना? पीछे वाले हैं. देखिए मैं इतना देख रहा हूं पीछे पीछे तक. एकदम पीछे वाले नहीं देख पा रहे. वो नीचे अगर मोबाइल कर लेंगे तो नहीं देख पाऊंगा. वो तो हमारा भगवान और भक्त की एक बिलीफ है कि नहीं कर रहे होंगे. वैसे मंदिर में जाके अगर मोबाइल आप देखने लगेंगे तो भगवान कुछ नहीं कर सकते. ओके कम माय मोमेंटम गेट्स ब्रेक. So that's the reason I always want you to be connected with me throughout. So I was on a point, doctrine of impossibility. And the argument which was given before the court is, my lord, I paid the amount to the supplier. मैं supplier को दे दिया. अब supplier ने जमा नहीं किया, मुझे कैसे मालूम पड़ेगा सर? 2A था नहीं. 2A था नहीं. It came only from January 2019. So prior to 2A, I was not even knowing कि supplier लेके भी जमा नहीं कर रहा. Doctrine of impossibility. आप मेरी क्रेडिट, अब आप बोलेंगे नहीं नहीं लॉ बोलता है इसमें तो कि सप्लायर जमा नहीं करेगा, तो अकेले इसी प्रोविजन को रीड कर लूं. अगर मेरे पास 1, 2A, 2, 1A, 3 होता तो आपको मालूम पड़ गया होता कि बिमल ने जमा नहीं कराया. जब आपने वो विंडो मुझे अवेलेबल किया ही नहीं, तो हाउ इट कैन बी डिमांडेड रिवर्सल फ्रॉम यू. सो 2A जब नहीं आया, अब 2A आ गया, तो 2A आ गया, अभी भी चैलेंज है सर. 2A में यही तो दिखाता है स्टेटस फाइल्ड. एम आई राइट? 3B फाइल्ड, बट मेरा इनवॉइस उस 3B में है या नहीं आपको कैसे मालूम पड़ेगा? आर यू गेटिंग माई पॉइंट? आर यू ऑल गेटिंग इट? जस्ट ओनली आपने अपने 2A में देखा स्टेटस फाइल, इट इज नॉट इंडोर्समेंट कि जो इनवॉइस आपको मैंने रेज किया उसका पेमेंट, am I right? There is no matching. अब आएगा ना सीक्वेंशियल फाइलिंग से 1-3B मैच होगा, अदरवाइज तो मैच नहीं होगा ना, तो 2A आने के बाद भी कैसे होगा? अब एक आर्गुमेंट मैं आपके सामने देता हूं, दिस आर्गुमेंट इज वेरी गुड आर्गुमेंट, वेरी गुड आर्गुमेंट. Section 41 subsection 2 got amended. White Finance Act 2022. White Finance Act 2022, effective from 1st of October 2022. Read this interpretation. This is very good and interesting interpretation. What department used to do, वो बोलता था कि हम आपसे रिवर्सल ले लेंगे. Am I right? DY बेतल ने इनको अलाउ नहीं किया, having 16 subsection 2 clause C अलाउ नहीं किया. Now this is the question in their mind also, because all the tax liability from supplier driven perspective, you can't demand from recipient. 41 subsection 2 क्या बोलता है, पहले मैं प्रोविजन बताता हूं आपको. 41 subsection 2 ये बोलता है, बिमल, if supplier has not paid the taxes, then it would be recovered from you. It would be recovered from you along with interest. Why they have brought this provision? I will tell you. And once your supplier pays the liability, you can take the credit back. So there are certain questions one after another. पहले interpretation को देख लेते हैं. Why they have brought this provision? For me, they are going to say to the court, Milord, why I am demanding reversal? Because this is now as per 41 subsection 2. Am I right? Provision saying so. Reversal can be taken from them. And that is what the provision, that's the reason we are demanding reversal. I will say, Milord, I am happy. So nice they have brought this provision now. But this is the prospective clause from 1st October 2022. Can you demand reversal? And I will argue in this way. If it is prospective clause, then it may be applicable only from on or after 1st October 2022, but can't be applied for the past period. Are you getting my point? So this is argument number 1. And this is helping me. आप ही सोचिए ना, अगर कोई प्रोविजन आपसे रिवर्सल, अगर पहले ही रिवर्सल था, जस्ट थिंक दैट वे, अगर सेक्शन 16 सबसेक्शन 2 क्लॉज सी रिवर्सल था, तो ये लाने की जरूरत क्यों पड़ी? मीनिंग thereby they wanted to endorse, now reversal provision exists, that's the reason they are demanding reversal. So it is only prospective, it cannot be retrospective for the past period. Interest is a loss. Coming to the argument, have you heard of unjust enrichment? एक ही ट्रांजैक्शन पे 2 बार टैक्स ले लो. हैव यू हर्ड ऑफ? सुना है ना आपने कि एक ट्रांजैक्शन पे 2 बार टैक्स नहीं ले सकते. एक एग्जांपल मैं आपको देता हूं. देयर वन प्रोविजन, अच्छा इसको थोड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग करके बताऊं तो ज्यादा अच्छा लगेगा. एक बार एक मिनिस्टर से मेरी डिस्कशन, वन मिनिस्टर डिस्कशन वाज हैपनिंग. सुनील भाई नमस्कार. Sunil bhai has come, so maybe post lunch you will enjoy him. He is going to serve his food from Mumbai. I'm serving you North Indian food from Delhi. So let's enjoy. Okay. I was talking to one of the minister. MOC, only 5 minutes. Okay. Can I extend for few minutes more? With due permission? पक्का चलेगा ना? वो बोलना स्टार्ट करता हूँ ना, फिर वो घड़ी समझ में नहीं आती मेरे को, तो 5-10 मिनट ज्यादा करेंगे, ठीक है ना? ज्यादा बहुत, आपको भूख ज्यादा नहीं लगनी चाहिए, राइट? भूख जैसे ही लगे वहीं पे खत्म. वो हाई कोर्ट में होता नहीं है लंच टाइम पे, कोर्ट का जब मूड हुआ बंद. सो आई वाज टॉकिंग टू वन ऑफ द मिनिस्टर एंड आई वाज सेइंग, सर एक प्रोविजन बड़ा आपने गलत बना दिया है. उन्हें पूछा क्या है, क्या प्रोविजन गलत है? मतलब सर मैं चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट हूँ और आप ना मुझसे GST एक्रूअल बेसिस पे ले लेते हैं, जबकि हमारे प्रैक्टिस में तो ये सर, अगर मैं इस साल अगर ऑडिट किया और इस साल अगर मैंने इनवॉइस रेज किया तो मुझे पुराना साल का फीस मिलता है. ऐसे ही होता है ना? ऐसे ही होता है ना? और इस साल का जो रेज किया वो अब अगले साल मिलेगा। बोले बिमल तेरे लिए एक प्रोविजन निकाला है ना। मैंने पूछा कौन सा प्रोविजन? वो 180 डेज वाला, कि बायर जो इनवॉइस आपने रेज किया अगर 180 डेज में पेमेंट नहीं किया तो उसको रिवर्सल करना पड़ेगा अलोंग विथ इंटरेस्ट। एम आई राइट? आपको याद है ना? वो तुमको पेमेंट करेगा। मैंने सर वो कर रहा होता तो दिक्कत थी नहीं, आपके प्रोविजन लाने से कुछ नहीं होगा। फिर मैंने उनको समझाया सर एक ही ट्रांजेक्शन पे आप 2 बार टैक्स ले रहे हैं, एक ही ट्रांजेक्शन पे आप 2 बार टैक्स ले रहे हैं। पूछा कैसे? मैंने कहा सर जब मैंने 10 लाख का इनवॉइस रेज किया तो मैंने तो टैक्स जमा कराया एक्रूअल बेसिस पे, किया ना। अब आपने 180 डेज में नहीं दिया तो आप भी रिवर्सल मारिए अलॉन्ग विथ, तो एक ही ट्रांजेक्शन में 2 बार टैक्स नहीं हो गया? हो गया ना, और वो भी इंटरेस्ट के साथ। मैंने सर यहीं पे स्टोरी खत्म नहीं होती है। आपने बिमल के लिए भी बोल दिया, बिमल तूने अगर बिजनेस चालू किया ना इंडिया में तो सबसे पहले तू पैसा लेके आएगा। अब मैं आपको 10 लाख का इनवॉइस रेज करूंगा, आप तो अगले साल ही देंगे, तो जमा तो मुझे कराना पड़ेगा ना, अदरवाइज रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट इज 18%। सर अब आप मुझसे कहते बिमल जा वर्किंग कैपिटल लोन ले 12% पे, नहीं तो 18%। इट इज नॉट ईज ऑफ बिजनेस। आप रिफंड के ऊपर मुझे सर पहले रिफंड ही टाइम पे दे दो, पहले रिफंड ही टाइम पे दे दो, और रिफंड पे इंटरेस्ट कितना है? 6%। इट इज नॉट अ पैरिटी एट ऑल। सो आई एम नॉट फाइंडिंग दैट। सो 180 डेज वाला वो मैंने आपको अनजस्ट एनरिचमेंट बताया। अब मैं यहां पे सप्लायर वाले पॉइंट पे था। आप 41(2) इसलिए लेके आते हो, यू आर इंडोर्सिंग योर स्ट्रेंथ दैट आई कैन नाउ रिकवर दिस मनी। Otherwise, section 16, subsection 2, clause C was there, right? So within the law, we have to really interpret. Now they are demanding reversal. Okay, way forward, acceptable. But for the past period, you should not do any litigation, even for the time limit. So for me, argument still exists that we can, two-way आने के बाद भी, I can always say it is only from 1st October 20. अब आरसीएम कर लेते हैं इसके अंदर, आरसीएम फ्रॉम रजिस्टर्ड सप्लायर, आरसीएम फ्रॉम अनरजिस्टर्ड सप्लायर फॉर द पास्ट पीरियड। लेट्स से आई एम अनरजिस्टर्ड सप्लायर, जीटीए, रजिस्टर्ड नहीं हूं, 17-18 का, मैं एडवोकेट हूं, मैंने फर्स्ट इनवॉइस रेज किया 1 जनवरी 2019 को 10 लाख रुपए का आपके ऊपर, एडवोकेट, आई एम नॉट रजिस्टर्ड। सो आरसीएम एप्लीकेबल टू ऑल ऑफ यू। आज 24 नवंबर, 24 नवंबर, am I? No, 27, yeah, 27 November. 27 November. You came to know there was one liability on 1st January 2019, 10 lakh rupees, advocate raising the invoice. You didn't pay any amount to Bimal Jain, being advocate. RCM is applicable, say yes and no. Applicable? From which date? 1st January, 1st February, किस डेट से? Anyone can stand and say, रिकॉर्ड ही नहीं किया, चलो मान लेते हैं, he is a wise guy. उसने बोला जब आपने रिकॉर्ड किया बुक्स में उस दिन से. Who said? Who said? Oh. So he is the person who is helping us from time of supply provision, point of taxation. Earliest of 2 days, date of payment, which is not the case, or date following the end of 60 days from date of issuance of invoice. So it is 1st March is the POT, 2019. Now you have to make the payment, and RCM need to be paid in along with, because they are arising from 1st March. Question is credit available or not? Am I right? मिलेगा credit? बिल्कुल मिलेगा from unregistered supplier. He will self-invoice. You are going to raise the self-invoice to yourself under section 31, subsection 3, clause F, which must be today's dated. Don't date it in the past. Rule 36B says, Bimal, this self-invoice is the eligible document for you to avail the credit, provided payment is being made. Only non-compliance when a self-invoice timely issue, general penalty. Am I right? Had it been the case of registered supplier and subject to RCM, time limit applicable? Definitely applicable. Then you can't argue this unregistered supplier concept. Had it been registered supplier, मैंने अपने GSTR1 भरा होता जनवरी 2019 में, टिक कर दिया होता recipient liable to pay, तो यानी आपके लिए मेरी इनवॉइस ही एलिजिबल डॉक्यूमेंट थी, and that is applicable for 18-19. So time period gone from registered supplier, gone from. Am I clear to all of you? Last component and then I will close. There are a lot of search, seizure and arrest. I said ना अभी सप्लायर से बोलते तू जा, इसको पकड़ते, बायर को पकड़ते, एक सर्कुलर इशू हुआ अभी. And it is all in the case of fake invoice and fake credit. Fake invoice and fake credit. Let's say I'm a supplier A and you are my recipient B. I raise the invoice to you. What they are saying as per the circular, since Bimal has only raised the invoice and he has not supplied the goods, so there is no supply in the hands of A. Am I right? There is no supply in the hands of A. तो हम A से कुछ नहीं लेंगे. B, who is availing credit, and since he is not receiving goods, we will demand reversal from the B because he is not satisfying the condition of receipt of goods. Now try to understand, fake invoice, fake credit, all hai kya, and why they the hue and cry. I said 55,000 crore rupees, right? 2 years. 2 years. See, fake invoice you know much better than me, but let me explain to all of you. मतलब कुछ तो कॉमन है, कुछ तो जीएसटी में सबसे अच्छी बात क्या मालूम है, जो बात आपको समझ में आती है ना, वो बात पूरी इंडिया में सबको समझ में आती है. This fake invoice and fake creditor concept and arrest provision under section 69 red bit 132 subsection 1, बहुत टाइम चाहिए था, मेरे पास बहुत सारे केस, real case study which I'm handling, I could have said, but let me say within 5-10 minutes जो summarize कर सकूं. They are saying there are 4 specified offenses. This is called non-bailable offense. What are those 4 specified offenses? Supply of goods or services without invoice, which is called cash sale, Am I right? Second offense, issuance of invoice without supply of goods or services. This is called fake invoice. Only invoice is being raised but no supply is being made. And third, you are availing credit on such invoices. Fake invoice. And last, GST collected but you fails to pay beyond a period of 3 months from the due date of payment. Am I right? These are the 4. And amount, threshold amount is tax amount, 5 crore. More than 5 crore, non-bailable offense. Now, in this given situation, होता क्या है? Market में क्या होता है? Whenever we go in a market, it is usual tendency, bill के साथ कितना और without bill कितना? हाँ, usual tendency. अभी भी है. You go to buy any mobile, iPhone का मोबाइल लेना है, 1.5 लाख से नीचे आएगा नहीं, with bill और without bill, 2 rates. सप्लायर जो है वो क्या करता है, अगर आपने विदाउट बिल मांगा तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं, वो बिल किसी और को दे देता है. Am I right? So we all know these transactions happen in the market. There are certain genuine cases. Supplier used to take credit from the preceding supplier L1 and L2. मेरे पीछे से आपने मुझसे परचेज किया है, मैंने यहाँ एक्स से लिया, एक्स ने मुझे दिया, एक्स ने एक इनवॉइस फाड़ा, मेरे को दिया, मैंने 2A में अपना क्रेडिट देखा, उसी क्रेडिट को मैंने यूज किया व्हेन आई रेज द इनवॉइस टू यू एंड डिस्चार्ज माय टैक्स लायबिलिटी व्हिच इज कमिंग इन योर 2A और 2B and you are finding the status of supplier taxes paid filed. Am I right? So this is the second situation which is coming out. Third situation, सप्लायर का काम ही ऐसा था कि इनवॉइस आपको देता है और सप्लाई इसको करता है. Am I right? So there are mixed combination. How to defend all these things together? एक सर्कुलर इशू कर दिया, एक सर्कुलर ट्रेडिंग भी है कि इसने 100 का इनवॉइस रेज किया, मैंने 110 का रेज किया, आपने 120 का रेज किया. सर्कुलर ट्रेडिंग. Am I right? And they are saying there is no underlying supply of goods or services. पहले तो ये क्या करते थे, सबसे मांगते थे. 100 रुपए पे तू दे, 110 पे ये देगा, 120 पे वो देगा, 140 पे तो सबसे ले ले. Transaction value addition. One of the case I argued before the concerned officer, I said, sir, if it is a case of circular trading, which you are saying circular trading, to my mind, we have received the goods and services. If you are saying it is non-received, तो at most जो बीच में पार्टी है, मैंने अगर 100 रुपए पे माल लिया और 110 में माल बेचा, तो 10 रुपए का वैल्यू एडिशन है मेरे पास. You can demand the tax to the extent of only 10 rupees from me. 100 रुपए का आप इससे लो ना, अब उससे 100 रुपए पे ले लो, मुझसे 110 पे ले लो. It is not double taxation and triple taxation. उसको डन अवे करने के लिए दे ब्रॉट दिस सर्कुलर. और सर्कुलर में क्या बोला, अगर सप्लायर ने इनवॉइस रेज किया है और सप्लाई, आप कैसे मेरे पास द पार्टी हु इज कमिंग इन एंड टेलिंग मी, सर मेरे पास टैक्स इनवॉइस की कॉपी है, ईबे बिल है, टोल टैक्स का पेमेंट किया गया है, बैंक स्टेटमेंट है, बैंक से पेमेंट हो रहा है, सब कुछ मेरे पास है. इस सप्लायर को पकड़ लिया है. सप्लायर ने बोल दिया स्टेटमेंट में कि नहीं नहीं मैं तो फेक इनवॉइस ही रेज करता था. अनदर सिचुएशन, एक्स से जो मैंने लिया माल, एक्स ने हो सकता है GSTR 1 ही भरा था, 3B नहीं भरा था, मेरे 2A में आ गया, मैंने उसी क्रेडिट को यूज करके आपको पे कर दिया, आपका पे कर दिया, आपके 2A में आ रहा है, आपने देख भी लिया कि 3B से पेमेंट है. आपको कैसे मालूम पड़ेगा बियॉन्ड बेमलजन क्या ट्रांजेक्शन है? आर यू गेटिंग मी? डॉक्ट्रिन ऑफ इम्पॉसिबिलिटी, lax non cogit ad impossibilia. At most you can see the transaction with Bimaljan only. Beyond Bimaljan there is no window available. Just because L1, L2 vendor has not paid the taxes, it cannot be ineligible credit. Of course government को tax नहीं मिला, but आपके ऊपर कैसे आ जाएगा? आपको कैसे मालूम पड़ेगा कि X and Y has not paid the taxes? बिकॉज आपने ऑटोमेटेड GST रिटर्न सिस्टम कभी इंप्लीमेंट किया ही नहीं. अगर किया होता तो सारी चीजें टेबल पे आ गई होती, 90%, 95% टेबल पे आ गई होती. देयर विल ऑलवेज बी स्क्रूड गाय, ब्लैक से विल ऑलवेज बी देयर इन आवर सिस्टम. बट हैड इट बीन इंप्लीमेंटेड द वे इट वाज इन्वेस्ट एज, आई एम ऑफ द व्यू ये सारी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो गई होती. अब चूंकि आपने इंप्लीमेंट नहीं किया, आपके क्रेडिट को इनएलिजिबल इसलिए बोल दिया कि आगे टैक्स का पेमेंट. अरे आपको कैसे मालूम पड़ेगा कि बिमल ने कहां से लिया है माल? और बिमल भी तो बोल सकता है कि मैंने एक्स की बात थोड़ी कर रहे हैं, आप एक्स माइनस वहां तक चले जाइए, हो सकता है बिमल इज ऑल्सो राइट. सो देयर आर लॉट ऑफ पॉइंट व्हिच इज डिबेटेड एंड डिस्कस्ड फॉर सर्च, सीजर एंड अरेस्ट प्रोविजन. दीस सर्कुलर आर ओनली गिविंग, बिमल ने सप्लाई नहीं किया तो ये सप्लाई नहीं है, तो बिमल से तो हम कुछ चार्ज करेंगे नहीं, आपसे हम रिवर्सल मांगेंगे. एक प्रोविजन अब बोलते नहीं बिमल से ना हम 122 का ऑफेंस की पेनाल्टी मांग लेंगे. बिमल से क्या मांग लेंगे? अब 122 क्या बोलता है? हायर ऑफ टू अमाउंट 20,000 एंड टैक्स इवेडेड. जब बिमल की सप्लाई नहीं है तो टैक्स इवेड कहां? जब बिमल की सप्लाई है ही नहीं है तो टैक्स इवेडेड का. तो यानी अगर 500 करोड़ का भी केस है तो पेनाल्टी कितने की? 20,000 रुपीज. व्हाट ए मॉकरी यार. सर्कुलर लाना है बस ले आए. I was there pre-budget memorandum with Revenue Secretary very recently, 2 days back. I posted कि Revenue Secretary से मुलाकात हुई, where the CBIC chairperson was. Tomorrow again I'm also meeting with the CBIC chairperson. There's a NIFPPF program, national conference, 2 दिन का है, and they have given me some slot of 30 minutes also from trade side to represent. What I said to the CBIC chairperson and Revenue Secretary, I said, sir, the circular instruction which you department are issuing, even I'm finding at the ground level your officers are not accepting. I took an example of, without naming, warranty replacement. DGGI is wanted to levy taxes on warranty replacement. I shown them FAQ and circular and everything. They're saying, no, we are not agreeing. It may fall under entry 1 of schedule 1, may fall under entry 2 of schedule 1. मैंने बोला सर अब तो आप कहीं से भी आप ले ही लो, कहीं से भी आप ले ही लो. It is not the case. Just circular. There's a composite supply, you know, understand, right? 2 or more taxable supply. Just take one example. You are going for repairing of car. 8,000 rupees auto component, 28% GST, 2,000 rupees labor charges, 18% GST, 10,000 rupees. When you are coming for getting your car repaired, what is your intention? Buy auto component? Say yes or no? Your intention is to get services. So principal supply is services, and it will be taxable. 10,000 combo going to be taxable on the basis of services, 18%, right? But there is a specific circular saying, Bimal, if you know the bifurcation, 8,000 and 2,000, then you may apply respective rate. So sometimes they are taking the advantage and accepting it. Sometimes they are saying, no, we will not look at the circular. So a lot of things happening in GST. Time is the pause because I can't continue. Then other speaker is also available. Then you need to take good lunch also. So maybe post lunch you can enjoy much and more. But theme line. You have to give me answer of 2-3 questions. Are you all ready? Yes. Pakka? Take away from my session would be, take away. Don't compromise with the quality. Don't compromise with the content. Be a Haldiram samosa. Don't be Agarwal samosa. If client is not willing to pay 5,000 rupees, start saying no. हाँ कई बार चैलेंज होता है, सर आप बोल सकते हैं, सर आप, तो आपको मेरे बैकग्राउंड में जाना पड़ेगा. सुनील भाई भी बैठे हुए हैं. He will also agree with me. Someday we have to stand on our own leg. Client is not willing. They are sometimes they will say no, why this much, why this is not. You have to have something of your say. Unless you have your own say, you will not be able to present yourself. And that goes in the life also. Personal life में भी चले जाइए. A dummy character versus real character. अपनी बात रखने का तो होना चाहिए ना. It is my wisdom. I will say what is right and wrong. Am I right? Sometimes there is a challenge. So believe me, I have not compromised. Even when there was no practice with me, I have not taken up anything which just for the sake of doing it. No. Second takeaway would be, yes, article से return जरूर भरवाइए. आर्टिकल से रिटर्न जरूर भरवाइए, बट थोड़ा सा टाइम आप भी उसको दीजिए, उसको भी थोड़ा टाइम देने दीजिए. सी व्हेन यू बिल्ड ए गुड टीम, your work efficiency will go up, and we are lacking here. Sunday you are coming and listening to Bimal Jain, and Bimal Jain coming all the way with only 1.5 hours sleep. That kind of passion must be there. Am I not right? अगर ये होगा तो हम आगे सीखेंगे. ये होगा तो हम सीखेंगे. And third and last, मजा आया? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for such an energetic, mesmerizing session. I never thought such complicated topics could be so interesting. Thank you. Now I request CA Rushikesh Badwe to present a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. I think the applause should continue. Can we have a big round of applause, please? That is the amount of passion, that is the amount of expertise, and that is the amount of knowledge that Bimalji brings to us, all of you. So I once again formally thank CA Bimal Jain sir for coming here all the way from Delhi, and with just 1 hour, 1.5 hours sleep that he mentioned. I really, from the bottom of my heart, thank him on behalf of Pune branch. So, and I once again request him that many more such sessions would follow. आप आ जाइए पुणे में, हम बार बार आपको बुलाएंगे. Yes, thank you, thank you. So on behalf of the entire managing committee of Pune branch, I thank CA Bimal Jain for this excellent deliberation. Thank you. So lunch is waiting for all of us. So let us now proceed for the lunch. Thank you.